Guanghe 3 years, one noon in early September. A young man on horseback came from Fanyang Pavilion. He was about 20 years old. He was wearing hakama and pleats. He didn't have a crown on his head, only a scarf and a ringhead knife hanging from his waist. Hakama pleats are foreign goods, from nomadic peoples, which resemble the jackets and trousers of later generations. His name was Sun Zhen, and he was the new head of Fanyang Pavilion. Although it was already autumn, the so-called autumn tiger, the weather was still very hot, and Sun Zhen had been driving for a long time under the sun again, sweating on her forehead and face. In front of the pavilion, he restrained his mount, wiped his sweat with his sleeves, and looked around. Like most of the pavilions in the empire, Fanyang Pavilion is also located on the main road. In front of the pavilion, there is a straight and wide official road, which is the road he took when he came. On both sides of the official road are large fields of wheat. This year is a good year. After the fall, the rain is relatively sufficient, and the winter wheat in the field is lush. When the wind blows, the green wheat seedlings are undulating, and a fragrance mixed with heat hits the nostrils. From a distance, you can see twos and threes of Tianu and Tufu wearing trousers with little noses and working shirtless among them. Not long after the day, there were many vehicles and pedestrians on the road. There are Confucian scholars in single-clothed shoes, businessmen in elegant clothes, and Qian Shao in black or white. Because the world is unstable and the road is unstable, pedestrians often wear short knives and long swords with them. Sun Zhen deflected the horse's head and gave way to an ox cart approaching from the opposite side. In the car sat an old Confucian scholar led by Gao Guanbo, neatly dressed, sitting quietly and peacefully, next to a 7 or 8-year-old child. When the two sides crossed, the child looked at Sun Zhen curiously. The child's complexion is clean and smooth, like pink and jade, and he is very cute, sitting on his knees under the hood of the car like a little adult. Sun Zhen gave him a friendly smile. The ox that pulled the cart, the wheels and the body of the cart were all covered with dust, and it looked like the road was not close. The old man probably came from out of town with his grandson to visit friends in the city. Go straight along the official road, and you will reach Yingyan County several dozen miles away. Yingyan, now Suchang, is located in the hinterland and belongs to Yingchuan County. The Lu family is the descendant of the King Zhen of Jibei in the former Han dynasty, and the Sun family is the descendant of the Confucian master Sun Kuang during the Warring States period. Sun Zhen was born in the Sun clan. In a major epidemic many years ago, his parents died one after another, and he was the only one left. He inherited the shadow of his ancestors. There was a mansion in the family and hundreds of acres of fertile land. Is a Chinese home. The ox cart squeaked away, and Sun Zhen's mind quickly turned to the present. He jumped off his horse, adjusted his attire, and came to the pavilion. Ting people, stop also. The local pavilion is not only the most basic security unit, but also has the responsibility of receiving past officials and providing accommodation for the people who traveled far, so the pavilion is quite large. Yingyan is a large county, and Fanyang Pavilion is one of the best in the county. The facade of the pavilion is very stylish. From a long distance, you can see that there is a pillar more than zhang long in the pavilion, and there are two large wooden boards at the upper end of the pillar, which cross and traverse. This thing is called Huabiao, also known as Huanbiao. It is an ancient system. It is used to indicate the direction of the road to pedestrians. It is also used as a road sign and is also the sign of the pavilion. At this time, when I got closer, I could see it more clearly. I saw that the pavilion occupies a large area, the foundation is higher than the ground, and there are slate stairs connected to the official road. Standing under the blue sky and white clouds, between the official road and the wheat field, he looked outside the door for a while, feeling both familiar and unfamiliar. The familiar is that he has seen many similar pavilions on the way to travel in the past, the unfamiliar is that he is about to become the owner of the pavilion in front of him, and there is an indescribable strange feeling. This is the place where I will live for a long time in the future. It has been 10 years since I came to this era. It took a lot of hard work and I was finally able to take charge of a pavilion. Although the area under my jurisdiction is only 10 miles, it can be considered that I can start a big plan. Already. After teasing himself for a few words, he led the horse up the stairs, leading to a gate. There was an old soldier sitting in the school beside the door. Seeing him come up, he walked out of the house and asked kindly, "Stay in? Is there something else?" "Under Sunson." The old soldier stood up straight and asked, "But the new pavilion?" "Exactly." "Alas, please forgive the villain's clumsiness." The old soldier was frightened, raised his robe, and was about to bow down. Sun Zhen stopped him and said with a smile, "You don't have to." He looked at him a few more times, seeing that he was thin and small, with wrinkles on his face, and the mountains, rivers and ravines seemed like, and he asked tentatively, "I visited Zheng the day before yesterday. June, I heard him mention that Ben Tingting's father's name is Huang Zhong. But what about you?" "It's the little guy." Zheng Jun, whose name is Zheng Duo, was the first pavilion chief. He was promoted to the county because of his ability to save the people during the pandemic last year and his excellent performance in examinations. Father Ting is one of Ting Chang's deputy. Ting, although it is the most basic unit, after all, it is in charge of a 10-mile radius, so there are subordinates under the pavilion chief. Begging for robbery, Palm to catch thieves, Ting Fu, Palm to open and close and sweep away. If there are many households in the jurisdiction, there will be more or less pavilions depending on the situation. A smile appeared on Sun Zhen's mouth, and she said to herself, Huang Zhong, Huang Zhong, when I first heard the name, I was stunned for a while. Now, it seems that the name is quite right, and it fits the face very well. Old Huang Zhong. Huang Zhong said respectfully and cautiously, I only received the notice from the county yesterday. I didn't expect Sun Jun to come today, so I couldn't meet at the pavilion. Please forgive me. Others are still in the house, Sun Sir, please wait a moment, I will call them out. No. I'll just go in. Climbing up the steps, Sun Zhen glanced at the school next to the door. The room was simply furnished, with only a few beds per bed. 20 small portraits were pasted on the walls of the school. Due to the distance, it was difficult to see clearly. Generally, there were old and young people in the paintings. Several lines of text are written on the left side of each portrait, and a bright red seal is on the right side. Are these the wanted criminals of the court? Yes, there are from our county, and there are from other counties. Posting portraits of wanted criminals in pavilions is a practice inherited from the former Qin dynasty. On the one hand, it is convenient for passing people to expose the information, and on the other hand, pavilion officials can also check pedestrians based on the portrait. In the last years of Xinmeng, Emperor Guanggu's elder brother Liu Bashan enjoyed this kind of treatment because he gathered a crowd to revolt. Sun Zhen nodded, and without going over to take a closer look, she walked into the hospital. After entering the courtyard, I found that the pavilion has 2 entrances. The courtyard in front was smaller, with an open space in the middle. The Huan Biao he had seen in the distance was erected here. 3 houses on the right, 1 main room, 2 bedrooms, the standard 1 house and 2 inside style. Next to it is a small room with a kitchen. There is a stable on the left, which can accommodate 2 or 3 horses, but it is empty now, and there is not a single horse. There is a chicken coop beside the stable, and there are 4 or 5 chickens perched on the wooden frame in front of the cage. Yu reading www.yuganju. When Com saw someone coming in, he cried out giggling. There is a latrine next to the chicken coop. Huang Zhong led the horse into the stable, and drove the chicken into the stable with a hush. He walked back to Sun Zhen and introduced him diligently, we live in this front yard, and Sun Zhen's residence is in the backyard. Backyard? Yes. The backyard is large and clean. When Xian Zhenjun was there, he lived in the backyard. Sun Zhen took a few steps forward. The door to the backyard was hidden. Through the gap, you could vaguely see the eaves of the house. There was a big elm tree in the courtyard. It is still lush, adding some shade to the Ting Yuan. Huang Zhong went on to introduce, if there are officials and common people staying there, they all live in the backyard. Having said this, he remembered something, paused, and then said, in June, the imperial court issued an edict to seek talents, and a gentleman surnamed Yuan in Runan was recommended, and he was sent to Beijing by edict, because he was banned every day and night, and he stayed there. Benting, after staying for one night, I am very satisfied, and I left a letter on the wall. Do you want to take a look at Sun Jun? Sun Zhen smiled and said, don't worry. The words are on the wall, and you can't run away. You can look at it anytime. Where are the others? The new official took office and came here for a long time. Except for Huang Zhong, who was on duty at the door, no one came out to greet him. Although they probably didn't know that Sun Zhen was here today, they had just brought the horse into the hospital, and the rooster was making a lot of noise. Couldn't they have heard it? It's all in the backyard. Sun Zhen was slightly surprised and thought, why are you running to the backyard if you are not on duty in the front yard? Although he was surprised, he did not ask any questions, but said kindly, in that case, please lead the way and lead me to meet you. All the gentlemen in the pavilion. Huang Zhong answered yes, bowed his waist, led the way sideways, and led Sun Zhen to the backyard. As Huang Zhong said, the backyard is bigger than the front. Around the big elm tree in the courtyard, more than a dozen houses were built along the walls. Not only is the place larger than the front yard, but the architectural style of the house is also different from that of the front yard. The ones on the south side are all single rooms, with 5 or 6 rooms. There are 2 suites in the north. The inner one is the same as the front yard, with a main room and 2 bedrooms, the outer one has only 2 rooms. It has probably been built for a long time. The walls and wooden doors of the house are a little old, and the square bricks laid under the eaves outside the house are also full of potholes. Among the single rooms on the south side, weeds are still emerging from the roofs of several rooms. But overall, it's clean and tidy. These rooms in the north, the outer one is for Sun Jun to live in, and the inner one is reserved for the officials to sleep. The southern ones are for the officials' entourage and slaves. If there are commoners, they will also be arranged here. Introducing the overall layout, Huang Zhong pointed to a small hut in the corner of the guide, and added, there is the prison. The prison is the detention center. If there are criminals in the jurisdiction, the serious ones are sent to the county, and the light ones are detained here. The elm trees blocked the sun, and the sunlight projected from the gaps in the branches and leaves, forming light spots on the ground. There was just a gust of cool wind blowing, rolling up the fallen leaves on the ground and dancing. If water is needed, the well is in the north corner. Small but complete. As one of the best pavilions in Yingyan County, not only the place is large enough, but also various living facilities are complete. Although it looked a bit shabby, Sun Zhen was satisfied and said, very good. A cheer interrupted him. He followed the sound, and the sound came from a room on the south side with the door closed. Huang Zhong hurriedly walked over, pushed open the door, and shouted, "A Bao, A Yan, Sun Jun has arrived, you all come out to greet me." Sun Zhen walked over and looked inside the house. There were a total of 4 people in the room, 2 of them were sitting on the ground, playing Lu Bo, and the other 2 were watching the battle from left and right. The cheering sound should have come from the young man sitting against the wall. When Sun Zhen looked over, he was happily standing up, holding bacho with one hand and the copper coin at the other's feet with the other. Hearing Huang Zhong talking, and seeing Sun Zhen approaching, he hastily retracted his hand, threw away bacho, jumped up, bowed down to Sun Zhen, and said, "Little man Chen Bao, see Sun Jun." The other 3 also knelt on the ground and said unevenly, meet Sun Jun. I really didn't expect that on the first day I took office, I met my subordinate Jugai. According to the law, it is illegal to gather gambling, especially in pavilions, where they know the law and break the law. However, Sun Zhen pretended not to see him, and smiled slightly. What kind of June is the pavilion with a bigger sesame seed? Everyone, please get up quickly. He walked into the house and helped the four of them up one by one. Huang Zhong followed behind him, pointed to the person who bowed first, and said, "He is Chen Bao, the patriarch of Benting." He pointed to a strong soldier who was watching the battle, and said, "He is Cheng Yan and Benting Ting's pawn." Chen Bao was thin and looked like he was in his 20s. When he jumped up just now, his movements were very agile and light. Cheng Yan is about 30 years old, tall and strong, with a dark complexion. There is a very long scar under his left eye, which seems to be wounded by a knife, like a centipede, and snakes straight to the left corner of his mouth, which is truly hideous. The introduction of the former chief of the pavilion, Zheng Duo, passed quickly in Sun Zhen's mind. Chen Bao, the patriarch of the pavilion, is easy to gamble. The patriarch of the pavilion, Cheng Yan, is thick and ugly. His eyes turned from Chen Bao, and he made a turn on Cheng Yan's face, thinking, from the first impression, Zheng Duo's introduction is absolutely correct. Of the 6 people in the pavilion, 3 have already known each other, the father of the pavilion Huang Zhong, and the patriarchs Cheng Yan and Chen Bao. There is still one seeking thief and 2 pavilions. Sun Zhen turned her gaze to the remaining 2, and asked in a warm voice, "I don't know which of the 2 is begging the thief Du Jun." The 2 of them just laughed, but neither of them responded. Huang Zhong took a step forward and said, "Chief of the pavilion, this morning, the begging thief Du Mai and the Fan brothers went out to inspect the pavilion. The inspection of the pavilion is one of the daily tasks in the pavilion, and it is mainly in charge of the thief who is a full-time public security officer. Now that Du Mai, the begging thief, and the other 2 patriarchs, the Fan family brothers, have all gone out to inspect the pavilion, who are the 2 remaining people in the house?" Without waiting for Sun Zhen to ask questions, Chen Bao took the initiative to say, "Both of them are the head of the pavilion, and they have nothing to do today, so they will make an appointment to play together." After he finished speaking, he picked up all the money on the ground and handed it to one of them. He ordered, "Jun Sun has just come to take office, we can't help but express. You 2, go buy some wine and meat. When the pavilion door is closed at night, everyone will be together. Have fun." The 2 responded loudly, but refused to take the money. One of them held the dagger at their waist and said with a smile, "Since Zheng Jun left office, the little people have been looking forward to Sun Jun's arrival day and night. Today is finally here, how dare you call Ting we will buy some wine and meat?" After saying that, he accused Sun Zhen of the crime, and gave Sun Zhen a chance to refuse, and bowed out. When Sun Zhen chased out the door, the 2 of them had already left the door of the backyard, and they didn't respond. Seeing their backs go away, Sun Zhen thought, looking at the faces of these 2, they don't seem to be kind, and they are gambling with Chen Bao and Cheng Yan in the house. Since the time of crossing, he has heard, and with the memory of hearing about the predecessor Sun Zhen, he is already familiar with the current style of the ranger. Knowing that these young chivalrous youths are not afraid of the law and discipline, if they agree with each other, they will promise each other with their lives, and if they disagree, they will draw their swords and face each other. The most suffering. If you can't stop it, that's all. Sun Zhen secretly said, "Just take this opportunity to meet the ranger boy under Benting's rule." In the former Han dynasty, the main responsibilities of the Tingbu were to monitor public security and hunt down thieves. Although since entering the Eastern Han dynasty, some civil tasks have been gradually added, but maintaining public security and arresting lawbreakers is still one of the important tasks. That is to say, since Sun Zhen has become the pavilion chief, he will inevitably have to deal with those swinging chivalrous men in the future. And the big plan that he came to serve as chief Ting also had a deep relationship with this light chivalrous man. It's better to get acquainted sooner than later. Ting father Huang Zhong, Ting Pon Chen Bao and Cheng Yan also went out of the house. Huang Zhong said cautiously, before Mr. Zhang left, there was an explanation, saying that when Mr. Sun came, he could deliver all the manuscripts of this pavilion. Will Mr. Sun receive it later, or now? Listen to the string song, know the elegant meaning. Sun Zhen knew what he meant, smiled, took out a piece of bamboo slip from her bosom, handed it over, and said, "This is the letter of appointment given to me by the county magistrate. Mr. Huang will check first to see if there are any mistakes and omissions, and then it will be no later than the handover." The pavilion chief, although he was a petty official, was also an official. If a local person holds the post, it is better to say, if a non-local person holds the post, how to prove it. The appointment document is the only evidence. The place of origin, appearance, etc. of the member should be written in detail on the top to prevent someone from impersonating. This is not without precedent. The most famous is Emperor Guanggu, who pretended to be the envoy of Han when he was in trouble. Huang Zhong had a decent family background when he was young. He went to a rural school and read the Enlightenment textbooks such as Jiju Pian and Fanzhong Pian. He knew the characters, read them carefully, and returned them to Sun Zhen. Said, "Sun Zhen, please come this way." Huang Zhong led Sun Zhen to the north room, took out the key, opened the door, and introduced, "After Zheng Jun left, I have already cleaned up the house again. If there is anything that Sun Zhen is not satisfied with, we will try again." Cleaning. The side is the bedroom, the front is the main room. People filed in. The ground is covered with large square bricks and the walls are painted with chalk. Facing the door and facing the wall, a table was placed, and there was a couch behind it. A lot of bamboo slips are stacked on one side of the table, and on the other side is a pen holder with a few brushes. There are also inkstone drops, etc. On both sides of the table, 2 columns of wooden pings were placed until the door. Ping is the same as couch, it is a seat, the difference is that the couch is larger, so 2 people can sit together. There are seats on the couch and on the table in the house. Sun Zhen saw that on the 4 corners of the reed mat on the couch, there were also 4 stone towns. Yuuganshu.com are all in the shape of a tiger, which is to prevent the mat from folding during use. Behind the table, in the corner of the wall, there were 2 boxes made of bamboo and reed. Huang Zhong asked Sun Zhen to take a seat first, and then greeted Chen Bao and Cheng Yan. The 3 moved the 2 boxes to the side of the desk and opened them. Inside were scrolls of bamboo slips, green and lustrous, and each bamboo slip was 1 foot long. He took the top volume out of a box, put it on the case, unfolded it, and said, "These are all the papers in Benting so far. Some are cases that have been handled in the past, and some are communicated by the country and the county. Edicts, official documents. 1 pavilion for 10 miles, as the most widely distributed grassroots unit, not only posted portraits of wanted criminals, but also important announcements from the court." Sun Zhen glanced at the bamboo slip, and the opening part began to write, "Forgive the world below death." Since the beginning of the Han dynasty, in order to recuperate the common people and show benevolence, the Son of Heaven has often granted amnesty, especially after disasters. Last year, the epidemic was rampant and many people died. There are a lot of bamboo slips in the box, and there is not a day or 2 that you can't finish reading them. Sun Zhen didn't plan to take a closer look at this moment. She smiled and said, "There is no urgent business right now." Huang Zhong said with a smile, "Yes, yes." He rolled up the unfolded bamboo slips and put them back in the box. Sun Zhen approached the helper on the ground, and together with Huang Zhong, the 2 of them worked together to move one, and moved the 2 boxes back. When the box was put away, Sun Zhen said, "It's only afternoon, and it's too early to close the pavilion door. I'm new here, and I'm not familiar with the place. Mr. Huang, if you're okay, be a guide for me, go out and walk around. Huang Zhong has no objection. Just after coming out of the backyard, before reaching the front yard, one person rushed in like a whirlwind from outside the house, shouting, "It's not good! It's not good! Please criticize a lot, and there will be an update in the afternoon." A person rushed into the house and shouted, "It's not good, it's not good!" Huang Zhong greeted him and asked, "What's wrong?" Wang Tu, the meat seller, was killed. Sun Zhen was stunned for a while. Wouldn't she be so unlucky? When you first came to office, within half a day, you encountered a murder case. The person who reported the crime in front of him was very familiar, but wasn't he the one who just gambled with Chen Bao? He asked, "What happened?" "Don't worry, you can speak slowly. What's your name?" "The villain Shi Juxian, the villain went to buy meat just now. In Fanyang Pavilion, Wang Tu sells the best dog meat, so I went to look for him. As soon as I arrived at his meat stall, I saw Su Zhong kill him." The man who claimed to be Shi Juxian probably ran in a hurry on the road, gasping for breath from time to time, and finished the killing process he witnessed in a few words, exclaiming excitedly, "A Bao, A Yan, this Su Zhong is really a man. Must go." Sun Zhen was at a loss. Why was this Wang Tu killed? Before he could understand, Cheng Yan had already echoed Shi Juxian's words and praised him loudly. Although Chen Bao didn't say anything, but looking at his expression, he also looked very admirable. He became more and more strange, knowing that Su Zhong must be the key, and immediately asked, "Who is Su Zhong?" Cheng Yan opened his eyes wide as if he had heard something strange, and asked, "Master Sun doesn't know who Su Zhong is." Huang Zhong said, "Sun Jun has only come here, and he is not a local person. Of course he does not know this person." "What? Is this Su Zhong very famous?" "I don't dare to say it from afar, only the surrounding village pavilions, there is no one who doesn't know him." Sun Zhen immediately understood and thought, it must be another country chivalrous man. "Ask Shi Juxian, where did the crime happen?" "The big city." "Where's Su Zongren?" "Ran." Just now, when he came to Renting Chong, he encountered a major case, which should not be taken lightly. Sun Zhen stabilized his mind, entered the role, and said calmly, "According to the law, there are thieves in the pavilion, and those who do not know about it or do nothing, will be punished. It appears more than 3 times a year, up to the county ruler, the county magistrate and the county lieutenant must all be dismissed. In broad daylight, there is a murder case, we have to hurry to the scene. Cheng Yan, help me bring my luggage." In the luggage were long gowns and law enforcement tools, all brought from the county. Time was running out and he didn't have time to change his clothes, so he only took off the scarf and put on a red scarf representing the position of pavilion chief. He also took the wooden board and rope. He asked, "Is the big market far away?" "There are laws, and ropes are used to bind people. These 2 are necessary items for the pavilion to enforce the law." "Not far, leave the pavilion and go south, less than 2 miles away." "In that case, gentlemen, let's go to the crime scene and take a look." Huang Zhong and others all agreed. Chen Bailingli, when Cheng Yan was going to pick up her luggage just now, brought Sun Zhen's horse too, asked him to ride on it, shouted back and hugged, and went out of the house. "There can't be no one in the pavilion. Mr. Huang, you don't have to go. Chen Bao, there is a murder case, and begging for robbery can't be at the scene. You can find Du Jun and ask him to go quickly. Ian, Shi Juxian, you 2 show me the way and go with me." A few words were dispatched. Huang Zhong stayed behind, and Chen Bao went to find Du Mai. Shi Ju led the way, and Cheng Yan followed the horse. Sun Zhen stepped on the horse and ran to the scene of the crime, does she? Before crossing, Sun Zhen was also in the society, but he had never seen a murder case. After crossing the border, although the folk customs are fierce, but killing people is only heard at most. Now, not only has there been a murder case, but he has to rely on him to solve the murder case. Rao is a man of two lives, mature in mind, and involuntarily slightly nervous, and his palms are sweating. He recalled the police and bandit dramas he had watched in his previous life. The background of investigating criminals was very important, so he asked Cheng Yan, "You said that Su Zhong is famous in the local area. Is he from Arting? How old are you? How does your family make a living?" "He is not from Arting, but from Dongxiangting. There should be 24 or 5 this year, and his family makes a living by farming." Dongxiang Pavilion is to the south of Fanyang Pavilion, and the two pavilions are connected, under the jurisdiction of the same township. Sun Zhen said oh and said to herself, "It turns out that he is not from Benting, no wonder he didn't hear Zheng Duo mention it." Then he asked, "Since he is from Dongxiang, but he came to Benting to kill, then Wang Tu has something to do with him." "Enmity," Cheng Yan said carelessly, "God Sun, he does have a grudge against Wang Tuesday. Why feud? Dongxiang Pavilion is smaller than our pavilion, and the items in the market are not as complete as ours, so people from their pavilion often come to the headquarters to buy things." But they had an argument when they were shopping. Yes and no. How do I say this? As the sun moved westward, there were fewer pedestrians on the official road. Cheng Yan was about to answer when a few women approached on the road, in rough clothes, not dragging on the floor, all wearing apron-like knee covering, or holding a few pottery pot. Sun Zhen rode on a horse, looking down from a height, and could see clearly that the basin was full of clear water, which should have been scooped from a distant river to drink for the Tian slaves and Tufas who were working in the fields. Seeing that Sun Zhen and the others were riding horses and carrying knives, these women hurriedly hid under the road. One of them accidentally stumbled on something, screamed and almost fell, and the pot fell into the field. She didn't care that the skirt was splashed. She bent down sharply, picked up the pottery pot, and carefully lifted the crushed wheat seedlings, revealing a section of wheat-colored waist and high buttocks, facing the road. Shi Juxian, who was leading the way, laughed, gave a whistle, took 2 steps, patted her on the buttocks, withdrew his hand, put it under his nose to smell it, and exclaimed, "It smells so good! It smells so good!" The women all laughed. The arrested woman probably knew Shi Juxian, but instead of turning her face, she threw a wink. Sun Zhen glanced at the woman, and saw that she had an ordinary appearance and shabby clothes, but there was a style between her eyebrows and a young woman's charm. Shi Juxian looked back and smiled and said, "Master Ting, what do you think about these women? They are all the disciples and maids of the Feng family. Which one do you want to be attracted to? I'll tell you." Impact. Sun Zhen smiled, stretched out his hand to call him in front of the horse, and asked, "Ian is telling me about Su Zhong and Wang Tu's feud, do you understand? Why don't you know? Chief Ting, you came late, come 3 or 5 days early, and you will know the beginning and the end." "Oh! Did Ian tell you? The reason why Su Zhong and Wang Tu became enemies is because of his mother." "Because of his mother?" Sun Zhen immediately understood what Cheng Yan had just said, and said, "But his mother and Wang Tu had an argument at the market. It can't be called a dispute, it can only be called a humiliation. Tell me in detail." "We have a big market in Fanyangting once every 5 days. 5 days ago, Mother Su came to buy something, and accidentally bumped into Wang Tu's meat stall and lost a piece of meat. Wang Tu was rude, so he stepped forward and pushed and insulted. Poor Mother Su, who is almost 60 years old, was pushed to the ground by him in front of the villagers, and cursed with foul language for a long time. You say, how can Su Zhong not be angry? The Han dynasty ruled the country with filial piety, and the first book that children read after literacy was the classic of filial piety. It is strange that Su Zhong is not angry when his mother is humiliated. That's it. Killing for his mother, this Su Zhong is a dutiful son. Killing a mother because of her humiliation may sound unbelievable, but it was not surprising at the time. When the world was not long ago, the folk customs were simple, and the wind of revenge prevailed. Revenge was not only limited to blood relatives, but even the cases of revenge and murder for teachers and friends were not uncommon. More than 100 years ago, Huan Tan, a famous scholar, once said something about this custom. Today people kill each other, even though they have subverted the law, but they have private grudges, their descendants will repay each other, and later they will be deeply angry, and as for destroying households. He lost his job and is commonly known as Hejian, so although he was timid and weak, he insisted on doing it. Shi Juxian shook his head and said, "It's not just about killing your mother. Any other secrets?" Cheng Yan said, when Su's mother was humiliated, Su Zhong was not at home. When he came back the next day, he saw his old mother crying alone in the house. He only found out after inquiring, and immediately went to look for Wang Tu. But unfortunately, because the night before while sleeping in the hospital, Wang Tu fell ill. Sick. The story of Su Zhong murdered has twists and turns, which relieved Sun Zhen's nervousness when he first encountered a major case. He asked, "What should we do?" He vaguely guessed, yes, Su Zhong killed Wang Tu until today, but Wang Tu begged for mercy at that time. Is it? Wang Tu didn't know Su's mother, but he knew Su Zhong and knew her reputation, so after Su Zhong came to the door, he begged for mercy. But Su Zhong let him go at that time, but not because of his begging for mercy. Why is that? Because Su Zhong believed that killing Wang Tu when he was ill would be a breach of benevolence and righteousness, and a gentleman should not take advantage of others' dangers, so he let him go and made an appointment with him, and when he was healed, they would fight fairly. That's actually the case. Sun Zhen tutted in amazement and said to herself, "It's worthy of the word Kishi." He asked, "What's next?" Shi Juxian said, "Then it's today. Since Wang Tu can sell meat at a stall, it means that the disease must be cured. Now that the disease is cured, Su Zhong will of course do what he says. If you go out, you must do it." After hearing the ins and outs of Su Zhong murdered, Sun Zhen could no longer simply regard him as a murderer. Su Zhong's move clearly has the style of an ancient ranger. He glanced at Shi Juxian and asked, "Do you recognize Su Zhong?" "Recognize? I think you seem to admire him." "Who doesn't admire such a man? Then why did you come to the pavilion to report the crime? Aren't you afraid that Su Zhong will be taken by me?" Sun Zhen shook the wooden board in her hand and said, "According to the law, he was intentional murder. If you admire him so much, do you have the heart to watch him get caught and killed? His body is exposed on the street. I see that you still have the heart to molest women, and you don't seem to be worried at all." Shi Juxian grinned and said with a nonchalant smile, "Master Ting, I won't hide it from you. Su Zhong already has many friends, but now that he has done such filial deeds, his reputation will surely grow further and further, and the nobles in the county will welcome him. Treat him like a distinguished guest, and take the initiative to help him hide his whereabouts. As long as you don't catch him on the spot, you will never catch him in the future. In today's world, it is a common sight for tyrannical families to hand over rangers and hide lawlessness. Sun Zhen's clansmen had hidden illegals. Although they were not light heroes like Su Zhong, but celebrities wanted by the court, their nature was always the same, they were all wanted criminals. Sun Zhen knew that he was not talking nonsense, so he remained silent. Not long after, the three came to the big city. There are many people in the market, most of them crowded in front of Wang Tu's meat stall. Stars are holding the moon around a few teenagers who are light chivalrous at first glance, listening to what they say loudly and excitedly, and Shi Juxian before. The man who had come to buy meat was among them. Shi Juxian separated from the clamorous crowd and shouted loudly, "The pavilion chief is here, let's get out of the way, get out of the way." Sun Zhen got off the horse, was guarded by Shi Juxian and Cheng Yan, squeezed into the crowd, and went inside. There was a clearing among the crowd, in which a corpse lay. Perhaps it was influenced by the reason for Su Zhong's murder, but when the scene came to the front, Sun Zhen calmed down instead, squatted down, and used a wooden board to remove the body's short coat. Yuyuganshu.com The aorta was punctured, and the blood was all over the place. Under the pressure of Cheng Yan and Shi Juxian, the surrounding crowd gradually quieted down, and the noise turned into whispers. Is this the new Ting Chong? You're not too old. It's a pity that he was unlucky. He encountered Su Zhong's murder the day before he took office. Look, he definitely won't be able to catch Su Zhong, and he might be dismissed in a few days. Sun Zhen stood up, looked around, and said loudly, Sun Zhen, the new head of Fanyang Pavilion. Are you all from Benting? Some say yes, some say no. Do you know Su Zhong? Everyone should be. Who witnessed the incident when it happened? Several more people should be. Come here if you saw it. I have a few questions to ask. No one answered this time. Everyone just whispered, and no one moved. Shi Juxian volunteered and went up to poll people. Taking advantage of this free time, Sun Zhen asked Cheng Yan, why aren't Wang Tu's family members? The onlookers were obviously watching the excitement. If Wang Tu's relatives and family members were there, it wouldn't be like this. Last year, most of Wang Tu's family died of the disease, leaving only one wife and one young daughter. Last year, the epidemic was rampant and many people died. To this end, the imperial court also specially sent regular attendants and mid-visitors to patrol and deliver medicine. Sun Zhen pondered for a moment, then said, well, let's take the corpse first, and then go to inform his home. The case is very clear, Su Zhong murdered because of revenge, and there is no need to investigate the scene. People are already dead, and corpses cannot always stay on the ground. Since Wang Tu's family had only one wife and daughter, and no man, the work of cleaning up the corpse was done by Ting Zhong. Cheng Yan agreed. Shi Juxian dragged the two people who had responded just now and waited for Sun Zhen to ask questions. Shi Ju first polled several people, but they refused to come forward. Only two teenagers couldn't break free and were dragged over reluctantly. One of them said loudly, Wang Tu first insulted Su's mother, and then knelt down and begged Su Zhong for mercy. How can such behavior be called a man? Being killed is purely self-inflicted. What can I ask? Another provocatively squinted at Sun Zhen, Su Zhong has already run away. If you are not afraid of death, go after him. Sun Zhen said in his heart, looking at the bad attitude of these two young people, Su Zhongzhen is quite popular among the local people. East. Shi Juxian blasted away the audience and said, it should be going to Su County. Su County. Su Zhong was originally from Su County, and he moved to the local area only after his father's generation. He has many relatives in Su County. Sun Zhen raised her eyes to the east. Shi Juxian smiled and said, don't look at it, you have already run far away, and you can't catch up on horseback. Really hard to catch up. After the crossing, Sun Zhen found that the current climate is warmer than before the crossing, the population is less, the local mountains and forests and grasses have not been developed enough, and there are many wild forests. As far as the eye can see, at the end of the field, is a dense forest. There is a small hill on the edge of the woods. There are rivers flowing through the hills, and the water and grass are lush at the bends of the river. In such a geographical environment, when the criminals have fled, even if the whole pavilion is sent out, it will be difficult to achieve results after a day or two. Apart from his mother, does he have any other relatives in his family? Does he have a wife and son? Does he have a brother? Uncle Bo Zongji. Su Zhong means second Su, and there must be a brother above. Shi Juxian replied, Su Zhong is not yet married. As for the elder brother, there is one, but he died a long time ago. He died within 2 years of his birth. There is a younger brother below. Brother. Yet. However, his younger brother is different from him. He likes to read and has a soft temper. By the way, I heard that his younger brother also studied in the county. There are many sages in the Sun clan, and many people come to learn from their teachers. Even in this county, at least half of the scholars came from the disciples of Zhu Sun. Apart from being a little surprised that a ranger's younger brother was so devoted to learning, Sun Zhen didn't take it seriously and asked, "Where is his younger brother now?" "Should be at home." "Do you know where his home is?" "In Dongxiang Pavilion." "Knowledge. Then I'll trouble you to lead the way and lead me to his house to have a look." "Is Chief Ting going to seal up his property?" According to the law, in serious criminal cases, one must receive his wife, son, wealth, and land, that is to say, he must conjoin his wife and son, and seal up his family property. It is the power of the county to seal up family property. How can I be the head of the pavilion? Does that mean you want to go to his house to catch him? He definitely won't hide at home. Regardless of whether Su Zhong would hide at home or not, if he wanted to investigate the case, he had to visit his house. Sun Zhen made a random excuse and said, "My son murdered and desperately wanted, and his mother didn't know it. I'll go and comfort his mother." Cheng Yan found a wooden board in the market, and invited 2 people to come to help, put Wang Tu's body on it, and was about to return to the pavilion. He heard Sun Zhen's words and asked, "Sun Jun, do you want to? Shall I accompany you?" "No. You just move Wang Tu's body to the pavilion." The 2 teenagers who had been arrested earlier stared at Sun Zhen with resentful expressions on their faces. Sun Zhen smiled at them without hesitation, and got on his horse. There was no concept of village at that time. Below the county are townships. Depending on the size of the township, there are several pavilions in each township. The township is mainly in charge of household registration, and the pavilion is mainly in charge of public security. Further down is the Li, the smallest administrative unit. Su Zhong's family lived in Dongxiang Pavilion de Wangli, because it was out of bounds, so Sun Zhen went to Dongxiang Pavilion first to say hello to the local pavilion chief. Unfortunately, it happened that the pavilion was taking a rest and went home. The surnamed Cheng in the booth was very enthusiastic. When I heard that it was for Su Zhong, and then I found out that Su Zhong had killed someone, his face immediately turned cold. After dawdling for a while, he refused to take Sun Zhen to Su Zhong's house. Shi Juxian said quietly to Sun Zhen, "Mr. Ting, Su Zhong is famous in the village, and Lao Cheng is his thief. The 2 have a good relationship. You can't expect him to cooperate. It's impossible." Sun Zhen made a decisive decision. Anyway, Shi Juxian knew Su Zhong's home and was not afraid that he could not find the door, so he left immediately. After leaving the Dongxiang Pavilion and walking on the road, Sun Zhen couldn't help but sigh. It is not the first time that he has seen the power of a ranger. There are many young chivalrous young men in the city, but none of them can compare to Su Zhong. The seeking thieves of the great pioneers of history, Cheng Yan, Chen Bao, the Wicked Boy, and Dongxiang Pavilion, all praised him and put their heads in their ears. He sighed and thought, the power of one person, down to Jian Shao, up to the pavilion, a small rural chivalrous man has such power. The Dewangli where Su Zhong's family is located is adjacent to the Dongxiang Pavilion. After getting off the official road and turning to the village road, after walking for a while, surrounded by wheat fields and trees, a settlement appeared in front of you. The li is mostly rectangular, and there are also squares. For the convenience of management and theft prevention, there are walls outside. In the countryside, some trenches have been dug. If there are walls, there will naturally be inner doors for people to enter and exit. The big li has 4 doors, and the small li has 2 doors. The King's Lane is not big, with only 2 doors. Shi Juxian was in the front, Sun Zhen led the horse in the back, and the 2 entered the door. Inside the door, Two men in black were squatting in the shadows by the wall and chatting. When they saw Sun Zhen, they both stood up. One of them came up to meet him with a smile on his face, and said, "Shi Lang, why are you here?" Obviously no Shi Juxian. Shi Juxian ignored him and said to Sun Zhen, "Ting Chong, this is the great King's Li. He is the Ljianman. Ljianman is responsible for the opening and closing of the inner door, and also supervises the entry and exit of residents and outsiders, and has a very low status." After introducing Sun Zhen, Shi Juxian said to the man, "This is the pavilion chief Sun Jun. Su Zhong committed a crime and killed someone, and Sun Jun will go to his house to see it. Hurry up and inform your lieutenant." The man jumped and said, "Su Lang killed someone? Oh, he killed Wang too?" I said, "Why did he take a knife when he went out in the afternoon? I didn't see it at the time." He was still smiling. "Talk to me for a while." He couldn't help but regret, if I had known it earlier, I would have stopped him no matter what. "Why are you so noisy? Hurry up and find your elder brother. Sun Jun and I will go to Su's house first." "Yes, yes." Shi Juxian took Sun Zhen into the Li. In the end, it is a rural place, not as good as a county. The roads in each Li in the county are very straight. From this door to the opposite door, the residential houses are distributed on both sides of the straight road. The road in the Great King's Lane is neither smooth nor straight. The houses on the side of the road were not neat, some went out forward, some leaned back, and some people splashed water in front of their doors and stepped on the mud. There are about 40 or 50 residents in the house, and most of them have their doors closed. Passing by two open doors, an old woman was sitting under a tree and weaving things with strips. A family had two children playing with water and mud in the courtyard. Seeing this scene, Sun Zhen recalled inappropriately when he was a child, and remembered that when he was young, he used to play mud and sand with his friends. Walking in the quiet, the walls are yellow and the trees are green, the young and the old are leisurely, the sun is shining on the body, and in a trance, he has a sense of time and space. "Master Ting, this is the Su family." Shi Juxian stopped in front of a house. From the outside, the house is not only small, but also very dilapidated. The earth-rammed courtyard walls are not high, and they are not painted with lime, and the yellow mud is exposed outside. The two short wooden doors have not been renovated for a long time. They were cracked by the wind and rain, and the paint has also fallen off. The black and white pieces are like big faces. Su Zhong, who is famous in the countryside, is so cold and bitter at home? This is completely different from what Sun Zhen imagined. If it wasn't for Shi Juxian to lead the way, he would have thought it was a mistake. Su Zhong's family is so dilapidated. Su Zhong likes to help others, and when he hears that someone's family is in trouble, he will help with all his money. Every time he gets money, except for his mother's food and his younger brother's education, all of them are scattered to help people in distress, and of course there is no money left. "Repair the house." "I see." In Sun Zhen's eyes, Su Zhong's image became plump little by little. He has a strong promise, is benevolent and filial, is famous in the village, and is in a hurry. Although he is only a country man, he should not be underestimated. If he has the opportunity, he may not be able to achieve a great career. Touching the situation, but at this time, after hearing about Su Zhong along the way, and thinking of the big plan he planned, an idea came to mind. Shi Ju stepped forward to knock on the door, and after a while, he heard someone in the courtyard ask, "Who is it?" It was a man's voice. Shi Juxian knew Su Zhong and came to Su's house, so naturally he also knew his younger brother. He whispered, "This is Su Zhong's younger brother Su Ji." He answered loudly, "I, Shi Juxian." Squeak, the courtyard door opened, and a boy came out. Sun Zhen looked at him and saw that he was about 15 or 16 years old, with a pale complexion, a very low stature, and a very thin stature. He was wearing a black Confucian clothes, which was loose and slouchy, as if he was wearing a short bamboo pole, and he held a roll of bamboo slips in his left hand. Maybe I was reading a book just now. It turned out to be Shijun. My brother went out and hasn't returned yet. Who is this? My new Ting Chong, Sun Jun. We are here because of your brother. He killed Wang Tu. What? Crash, the bamboo slip in Su Ji's hand fell to the ground. Kill Wang Tu. The courtyard was too small for horses to enter. Sun Zhen handed the reins to Shi Juxian, ordered them to be tied outside the door, and said cheerfully, "You don't have to be afraid, I'm not here to handle the case, I just heard that your mother is old. So come and see her." Su Ji recovered, gave a bow, and said, "I have seen Sun Jun." Sun Zhen supported him, bent down by the way, picked up the bamboo slip, and a sentence jumped into his eyes, Jian, Yuan, Hung, Li, Zhen. This is the first sentence of the opening chapter of Yi. Unconsciously, he thought, it's just a coincidence. He smiled, "Are you reading Yi?" Pointing, Yuan, Henry, Li, Zhen. My surname is Sun and my name is Zhen, and the word Zhen is exactly the same. From here. Su Ji has buried his head in his study all the year round, and is not very good at dealing with people. At the same time, he heard that his brother murdered, and the 6 gods had no masters. He took the bamboo slips, and Nyanyo responded. Sun Zhen looked at him carefully, and said, "I heard that you studied from all the sages in my clan? Who did you learn from?" "Mr. Erlong. 2 dragons, namely Sun Zhen's cousin Sun Rui. Sun Li's 8 brothers are all talented and are called 8 dragons. Sun Jian ranked second, so he was honored as 2 dragons. At present, among the Sun clan, he is the most prestigious, and he has the most disciples. Although Sun Zhen lived with him for 1 mile, he couldn't know his disciples well, and smiled, "Erlong is my father and then I follow him. In this way, you and I are not outsiders." Sun Zhen looked at the courtyard and asked, "Is the old lady at home?" "Exist. Please take me in to see you." Su Ji's teacher was Sun Zhen's follow-up father, and he couldn't shirk this request, so he had to let the door open. The yard is not big, with 3 earthen houses. In the corner of the courtyard next to the toilet, a row of vegetables has been prepared, but it has not yet germinated, so I don't know what to plant. The door on the left was half closed, and some movement was heard inside. Su Ji hesitated, and said, "My mother is old and can't be frightened. Sun Jun, please don't mention my brother for now. If you have any questions, just ask me, and I will tell you everything I know." "Okay, okay. Don't worry, I won't tell you." Su Ji asked him to wait in the courtyard. He entered the house first, and after a while, he came out again and invited him and Shiju to go in. Sun Zhen stepped over the threshold and entered the house. It's warm outside, but cool inside. He closed his eyes, and after getting used to the dark light, he watched again. The house is narrow, the ground is black soil, there are no bricks, and it is full of potholes. There is a wooden bed and a simple desk. There was a pottery bowl on the table, the side of the bowl was broken, and there was a small half bowl of water in it. Other than that, nothing else. A real family. An old woman was sitting on the bed with needles and a short coat in her hand, and when she saw Sun Zhen and Shijujin coming, she wanted to get up. Sun Zhen hurriedly stepped forward, held her down, and said with a smile, "Junior, why do you need to be polite?" He glanced at the needles and shorts, and asked, "You're mending your clothes? The light in the room is not bright, so you can see clearly. Is it?" Mother Su wiped her eyes and said, "I can see clearly, I can see clearly." She picked up the short jacket and said, "If only the middleman in my family could be like Saburo. Look, I can't wear one piece of clothing. It broke in a few days, and I don't know what I've been doing all day." According to Saburo, Sun Jun and him are classmates. The old man was a bit rambling, and his articulation was not very clear, and Sun Zhen couldn't hear a few words clearly. After listening to the old man's words, he glanced at Su Ji. Su Ji's face was reddish, restrained and uneasy. Sun Zhen thought in her heart, this young man is quite quick-witted. He should be afraid that I will mention Su Zhong, so he first reported my family name for me, pretending to be a classmate. Although it was a false claim, he didn't come here for inquiring about crimes, and he was not angry, he said, yet. I just got the appointment of the county magistrate and became the head of Fanyang Pavilion, so I came to see your old man at home. As the head of Fanyang Pavilion? Well, it's promising. I came in a hurry, and I didn't bring anything with me. Sun Zhen looked at the room and asked casually, is second brother not at home? I went out in the afternoon and said that I will be back later. Does Sun Jun also know Zhong Lang? How many times have I met? I heard that the old man has relatives in Su County. I may go to the Su County government office next month. Do I need to bring anything? Su County? There are a few relatives, Zhong Lang's uncles are all there. However, I am old, and my legs are tired, so I don't walk much these years. Last year, there was an epidemic, and I didn't dare to go out. I haven't been there for more than a year. They are all old relatives, and they have nothing to bring. Mother Su narrowed her eyes, looked behind Sun Zhen, and asked, is it Shi Lang who is standing behind? The old lady's eyes are so good, she is Ju Xian. Shi Ju Xian stepped forward and bowed respectfully to the ground. Get up! Get up! Su Ji helped Su's mother to lift Shi Juxian up, and said to Sun Zhen, Sun Jun came to my place for the first time, do you want to go out for a walk? Sun Zhen knew what he meant, but she was afraid that it's too much to say something wrong. As he was about to leave, he looked at Shi Juxian, looked at Su Ji, thought about Su Zhong's power, and thought about the purpose of his coming to be the pavilion chief, and said to himself, God doesn't take it. Take the blame. When I first came into office today, I encountered this murder case. I thought it was unlucky at first, but now it seems to be luck. He made his first decision after taking office as the pavilion chief. He was not from his mother-in-law, so he made a decision and acted immediately, ignoring the dust on the ground, and bowed to the ground uprightly, and gave a big gift to Su's mother. Mother Su hurriedly said, what is this? When I was a classmate with Su Lang, I always admired Su Lang's filial piety and eagerness to learn. This worship is not only worshipping the old lady. He paused and said meaningfully, it is also worshipping the old lady to teach two good sons. After leaving the hospital, he ran into two people, one was the ward of the ward, and the other was the chief of the local ward. Sun Zhen stopped them and said, the old lady is old, you can't be too bothered, you don't want to go in. She said to there, I am the head of Fanyang Pavilion, I don't care about you coming here, but the murder case is serious. When I return to Benting, I will definitely report to the official temple. It is expected that after receiving the report from the county, someone will come down soon, and they will definitely come to Su's house. You need to prepare. There should be a long line. Sun Zhen turned to Su Ji again and said, do you know where your relatives in Su County live? Su Ji hesitated for a moment, then shook his head and said, I don't know. Sun Zhen couldn't help laughing. With this expression, anyone could tell that he was lying. Knowing that Su Ji didn't answer honestly, he didn't ask questions. He took some money from his waist, handed it to Su Ji, and said, your brother murdered and implicated the family. Your mother is old and cannot be allowed to suffer. I don't bring much money. Take it. Su Jizang King Kong was puzzled and didn't know which Sun Zhen sang. Not only him, but everyone from Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Shi Juxian is also at a loss. According to the law, Su Zhong's case was to seal up his family property, but why did he keep money instead? Su Ji was terrified and refused again and again. Sun Zhen said sarcastically, "Since you are under the tutelage of Mr. Erlong, you are your own family. A man should be arrogant and straightforward, how can you act like a daughter? If you don't want it, I will tell the old lady, Su Zhong will be killed." People. Su Ji had no choice but to accept it. Sun Zhen smiled back and said, "That's right. Su Zhong's crime is his business, and the old lady cannot be affected." Saying goodbye to Su Ji and the others, Sun Zhen and Shi Juxian returned along the original road, went out of the inner door, and turned to the official road. Shi Juxian couldn't help but ask, "Master Ting, why don't I understand what you mean?" "I don't understand? What do you understand? I don't know if you want to arrest Su Zhong or not. Needless to say? Of course I want to bring him to justice. You have to put it before coming to Su's house. I believe it, now I don't believe it." "Why? I'm a little confused. Tell me the story. First, why do you bow down to the old lady? Second, Su Ji is clearly lying, why don't you ask? 3. You first told the governor that you would report the case to the county government, and then asked Su Ji if he knew where their relatives lived. Why do I think you're not asking for the address, but a hint? Sooner or later, his county will send someone to Su County to arrest him and remind him to go to Su County to report the news? Finally, why did he keep the money before he left? Didn't I say it? Su Zhong committed the crime, it was his fault, and his mother cannot be implicated. What about the third rule? You think too much." This answer seemed to make sense, but Shi Juxian always felt that something was wrong. When asked again, Sun Zhen just laughed and refused to answer. "There is one more tonight. Forgot that today is New Year's Day, I wish the children a Happy New Year. I just saw a lot of acquaintances in the book review area, you children's shoes, long time no see." Shi Juxian's intuition was right. As his understanding deepened, Sun Zhen really didn't want to hunt down Su Zhong. At the beginning of receiving the report, he thought about arresting the perpetrator to establish his prestige, but as he got to know Su Zhong more and more deeply, after learning about his person and his reputation, his thoughts also followed suit. It has changed. Why change? This starts with the word traversal. It has been 10 years since I traveled back to this era, and it is clear that I am at the end of the Han dynasty. Because he has a cousin named Sun Yu and a cousin named Sun Yu. Even if he is not proficient in history, these two names have always been heard. If it is said that the names of Sun Yu and Sun Yu are just a coincidence, then after hearing the names of Yuan Shao, Xia Haochun, and Cao successively, it must be the end of the Han dynasty. The first person I heard of was Yuan Shao. At a gathering of the clan at that time, the elders of the clan were tasting tea and commenting on the scholars in the hall, discussing the celebrities in Runan and Yingchuan. Someone praised with a tone of admiration, Runan Yuan Shao first wore his mother's mourning clothes, and then his father's clothes. It has been 4 or 5 years since he left office and returned home. What? I heard about Xiahedun again last year. Xiahedun was still young, only 14 or 15 years old. Last summer, a man insulted his teacher and was stabbed to death by him, which made him famous, and his name was passed from his hometown of Peguo to Yingyan, hundreds of miles away. This year, I heard about Cao. In June of this year, the imperial court issued an imperial edict to recommend those who could understand the scriptures. Ting's father, Huang Zhong, said that in June, the imperial court issued an edict to seek talents, and this is what he was talking about. Not only that Mr. Yuan from Runan was recommended, but also the magistrate of Dunkaiyu who was transferred from the northern way of Luoyang. Of Cao. In addition to the names of these few people, he has heard many other names one after another, and without exception, they are all celebrities in the late Han dynasty. However, although I know that I am in the late Han dynasty, which year is it? I only know that the previous year was changed to Guanghe, this year is Guanghe 3 years, but which year is it in the Western Yuan? Confused. It can be concluded that Suanyu and Xiahedun are not very old. Suanyu is not yet weak, and Xiahedun is even younger. It is estimated that the young man Yuan Shao and Dun Kaiuling Cao will not be too old. Based on this, it can be inferred that although it is at the end of the Han dynasty, it will be about 10 or 20 years before the turbulent times of the Three Kingdoms. In the days of this era, there is a stone that has been pressing on his heart. What he was afraid of was not the turbulent times of the Three Kingdoms. In fact, after knowing that Suanyu and Suanyu were relatives of his own, he breathed a sigh of relief. Suanyu and Suanyu, who are famous for their reputation, Cao's great advisors, when the Three Kingdoms arrive, the big deal is to follow them closely. They dare not think of glory and wealth, but at least they can save a small life. He was afraid of the Yellow Turban uprising. I also read some books before crossing, and I know the tragic conditions of the place where the rebels passed, but I must not lose my life in the Yellow Turban uprising before the Three Kingdoms arrive. And according to all kinds of clues, especially in recent years, he clearly found that it seems that the Yellow Turban uprising is not too far away. In recent years, large-scale infectious diseases have repeatedly broken out. In the past 10 years, there have been 2 major epidemics in the world, affecting the North and the South, and many people have lost their homes and even some clans. This includes Sun Zhen. Sun Zhen's parents died one after another because of the infection, including Sun Zhen himself, who was also infected with the cold many years ago, and could not afford to be sick. This gave he a chance to enter. In the face of the epidemic, everyone panicked, and as a result, more and more people in urban and rural areas believed in the way of peace. Taiping Road, isn't it the main force of the Yellow Turban uprising? What is the scariest thing in this world? It is not danger, nor death, but knowing that there is danger but not knowing when the danger will come, such as a sword hanging over your head, like walking on thin ice, like walking on the edge of a cliff with your eyes closed, always worried. It's not that he didn't think about reminding the world. But on the one hand, others are soft-spoken, and on the other hand, it is not that no one in the court sees the problem. 3 years ago, Situ Yangci once wrote to the emperor, thinking that Taiping Road would eventually become a serious problem, and asked to kill Zhang Jiao and others, but the emperor ignored it. He also mentioned this when he listened to the elders in the clan chatting. Situ, one of the 3 dukes, what he said didn't work, let alone a young Sun family with no fame? Sun Zhen had both successes and failures before crossing. She was not a weak person. The matter had come to this point. Since she couldn't change it, she could only find a way to adapt. She couldn't just sit still. How to deal with the upcoming Yellow Turban uprising? After thinking about it, he came up with 3 options, 1 to take refuge in Taiping Road, 1 to escape from a foreign country, and 1 to gather a crowd to protect himself. Relying on it obviously doesn't work. Although the Yellow Turban uprising was loud, it was quickly suppressed. If you do not take refuge, you will not necessarily die. If you take refuge, you will surely die. It's not enough to avoid the country. Thinking that when the Yellow Turbans rose up, Zhang Jiao shouted, and the 8 states responded. Hundreds of thousands of believers joined the prefectures and countries, covering the sky and shaking the sea. Although the world is big, where can I find the peach blossom spring? Neither can do either, the only way is to gather together to protect yourself. But, it's easier said than done. He has neither prestige nor money, and he is weak in age. The world does not know how to gather a crowd? So, is there a quick way to get prestige and money? He finally came up with a solution: be an official, go for a career. As long as you can become an official and work hard for a year or 2, won't you have prestige and money? Although there is a decision, it is not so easy to be an official. The struggle between scholar officers and eunuchs lasted for many years, and finally failed. In the more than 10 years since the 9th year of Yangtze, as many as 600 to 700 scholars have been killed or chained by the party, and almost all celebrities in the world have been wiped out. Means to be banned from being an official. Ying Yinsuen was a famous scholar among scholars, and many people were implicated. For example, his cousin Sun Tan was imprisoned for life. Another example is Sun Tan's elder brother, Sun Yu, who was known as Sun Boxiu, a good friend in the world and one of the 8 Jun because he was good at making friends. He was as famous as Li Ying, who was known as the model of the world, Li Yuan Li. Later, he also died with Li Ying. Originally, only the parties involved were imprisoned. But in the 5th year of Ziping, that is, 4 years ago, Cao Luan, the prefect of Yangchang, wrote a letter to vindicate the party members and asked for the release of the imprisonment, which angered the emperor. An edict was issued to expand the scope of the party's restraint. All disciples, former officials, fathers and sons, brothers, and even the 5 clans were all included in the party's restraint, and all those who held official positions were dismissed and imprisoned for life. Sun Zhen and Sun Tan and Sun Yu were related to the brothers within the 5 clothes. So, he was also implicated. I thought there was no hope, so I honestly waited for the yellow turban chaos to rise. Unexpectedly, last year, the county magistrate of Shangluo County, Wudou County and Shanghaishi remarked, saying, according to the etiquette, if you live in a different place from your ancestors and brothers, there is very little kindness. If you wear mourning, you only wear one of the 5 kinds of mourning clothes. The lightest one. Now that the Dangmen are into the 5 clans, they both violate the text of the scriptures, and they are not in line with the usual laws. The emperor moved the emperor, the party is in from the ancestors down, and all of them must be explained. What a joy! After the edict came down, he immediately prepared to enter office. But the question arises again, what kind of official should I be? Being an official is not a problem. With the help of Sun's fame, how can he get a half-official position, but there are not many choices in front of him. Although he has the background of Sun's children, after all, he is just a fledgling, and he has no fame. Unlike Sun Yu and Sun Yu, who were known to the county and county since they were children, even if they were recommended by the elders in the clan, they would definitely not get a good position. At most, they could serve as a county official. The county officials are not only very busy, but besides taking a rest, they can't go home after work, and must live in the dormitory within the county government. What kind of prestige and money can you get when you can't get in touch with people all day, and you're busy with filings? It is better to simply go to the village to be a pavilion chief who rules over 10 miles of land, at least with more freedom of movement and access to the grassroots. Moreover, the current world is no better than the later generations. In the later generations, official is official, official is official, and there is no gap between officials and officials in the present age. There are similarities in the Republican era he traveled through. A large number of famous ministers and high-ranking officials all started from the bottom rafters, and there are many who have been pavilion chiefs. Everyone knows the story that Emperor Jiaozu made the world by becoming the pavilion chief and then making friends with heroes. Not to mention Jiaozu, but only to high-ranking officials, civil and military officials. Fu Jun of the current dynasty followed Emperor Guanggu as the patriarch, and finally ranked among the 28 generals of Yuntai. Yu Yan, a famous minister who had served as the third duke, was also the head of the pavilion when he was an official. Although the patriarch needs to understand the law and the 5 soldiers, the children of the Sun family do not only study scriptures and do not understand world affairs. Sun Zhen had studied since childhood and had learned the laws and regulations. Knowing that the troubled times were coming, Sun Zhen humbly sought out the masters of martial arts among the clan. He went to his cousin Sun Chu to talk about his wish. Sun Chu, the son of Sun Tan, shares the same grandfather as the 8 dragons. He had a nephew who was very famous in history, Sun Yu. Because Sun Chu's family and Sun Zhen's family are not far apart, the first celebrity that Sun Zhen saw after crossing the road was Sun Yu. Sun Yu Xiaogu first lived with his grandfather Sun Tan, and after Sun Tan passed away, he followed his uncle Sun Chu. Sun Zhen knew that Sun Yu would become a great weapon in the future, and in order to get closer to him, he went to Sun Chu's house when he was only 10 years old at the time. It's reading. Sun Chu felt pity for his Xiao orphan, and also liked his Chang engaged and sensible, so he agreed. Since then, the two are brothers, teachers, and students, and their relationship is very close. Sun Chu is open-minded, but even so, he couldn't understand after hearing his thoughts for the first time. Why do you want to do this running errand? In the Sun clan, there are not only great sages and giants such as the father of the 8 dragons, Sun Chu, but also celebrities such as Sun Tan and Sun Yu who suffered from the disaster of the party. They are deeply respected by the scholars all over the world. With such a family background, why would you want to be a pavilion chief? Sun Chu said to him, you have been studying with me for many years, and you have been working hard and earnestly. I see it all in your eyes. Although you are on the list of solutions now, but you are still young, why should you rush to become an official? Even if you insist on becoming an official, I can also recommend you to the county magistrate. It is always better than being a pavilion chief. Sun Zhen replied, the pavilion chief is pragmatic, and the clerical officials are hard-working. Today, when the is in power, the way of speech is blocked, and people with knowledge cannot retreat. Instead of being a literate official who is busy with writing all day long, how can you be a clerk? What about the patriarch who can do something for Qian Shao? It's not that Sun Chu looked down on Ting Chang's lowliness, but he was simple in nature and hated being bothered by the minutiae the most. Even if you want to do practical things, you don't have to be Ting Chang. Ting Chang is the most tiring and lowly servant. Drive, work hard for the people, and be ushered and sent, and have to endure the shouting and scolding of high officials and nobles. Haven't you heard the words of Feng Zikeng? It is safe to serve people. Feng Zikeng was born in the late Han dynasty. Because his family was poor, he worked as a pavilion chief and was sent to him. He was inferior and could not bear to be driven, so he expressed the above emotion, and then resigned and quit his job. Sun Zhen replied, it's true that a man should be like this. However, although the pavilion chief is humble, as long as he does a good job, it is not that he can't get the praise of the world. Chen Liuqiujizi was called by the county to make up for the official when he was 40 years old. Served as the head of the pavilion, and later entered the imperial school. Isn't he also famous in the world? Even the famous sage Guo Linzong admired him. Su County Chen Taikyu, less than a county official, served in Duding, and now he is the leader of the world's celebrities. Even like Zhu Ziwan of the previous dynasty, it is also possible to make a marquis. Sun Chu knew that what he said was the truth, and although he was unwilling, he still took him to see the county magistrate and asked him to be the pavilion chief. After listening to Sun Zhen's request, the county magistrate was surprised at first and refused to agree. If I agree to your request, I will definitely be ridiculed by celebrities all over the world, saying that I am harsh to the famous clan. But could not stand Sun Zhen's repeated requests, and finally had to answer. Although the promise was a promise, there was no vacancy for the pavilion at that time, and it would not be considered a formal appointment until this year. Sun Zhen worked so hard to get the post of Fanyang Pavilion Chief. What did she do? Isn't it just to gain fame and money, so as to make friends with tyrants and prepare for the upcoming big change? This is his big plan to serve as Pavilion Chief. On the first day of taking office, the buttocks did not sit firmly, and he encountered Su Zhong murdered. If Su Zhongchun was a brave man, he wouldn't mind using the knife to establish his prestige, but through understanding, he found that Su Zhong was clearly not an ordinary person. Shi Juxian, Cheng Yan, Chen Bao, Dongxiang Ting Chu pirates and others all respected him. How could such a person be killed? If you can win over this person, wouldn't it be the same as winning over the rangers and warriors in the local village? As a result, Sun Zhen made those actions that Shi Juxian couldn't understand. Worship your mother and keep the money. As for the third doubt raised by Shi Juxian, he was not wrong at all. He was indeed reminding Su Ji to go to Su County to bring the news. He can open side to Su Zhong, but after the case is reported to the county government, what will be done in the county? He couldn't control it, he couldn't control it. Sun Zhen had self-knowledge, and knew that such a maverick and well-known light chivalrous person would not be easy to win over, and he might be arrested and brought to justice soon, but it didn't matter. The ancients said horse bones in the city of thousands of gold. He believed that his actions in the Su family would definitely not be used soon, and they would spread through the mouths of Shi Juxian, Li Kang, Jianmen, and others. Even hometown. That's enough. Time for future updates, 10 am, 4 pm. When we returned to the pavilion, twilight had come. On the way back, Shi Juxian said goodbye and went home. Sun Zhen led the horse into the pavilion alone, and just after entering the front yard, she heard a burst of crying. Huang Zhong, Cheng Yan, Chen Bao, and others were all there, in addition to 3 strange men and 2 women. The cry came from the 2 women. They knelt beside Wang Tu's body. The older one lay on the ground and cried a lot. The younger one didn't cry too loudly, but it was still weeping. Cheng Yan trotted over, took the reins, and led them to the stable. Huang Zhong, Chen Bao, and 2 other men hurried up to meet him. Huang Zhong pointed to one of the 3 men and introduced, Sun Jun, this is asking for Du Mai to be stolen from this pavilion. Little man Du Mai, I have met Sun Jun. Du Mai was about 30 years old, tall and stocky, with a black and red complexion. When he bowed, his legs were not together, but separated, as if they were tucked in circles. In a pavilion, if the pavilion chief is compared to the master, then the pavilion father is similar to the housekeeper, and the begging for theft is the eagle dog. Sun Zhen returned a bow and said, in the future, you and my colleagues don't have to be polite. Huang Zhong went on to introduce, these 2 are brothers from the Fan family, this is Fan Tan and this is Fan Shang, both of them are Ben Ting Ting's soldiers. The 2 brothers are of similar height and features, both with deep eye sockets and high cheekbones. At first glance, they look a bit like Hu people, and they are 7 feet taller than Du Mai. After seeing each other, Du Mai said, I don't know that Sun Jun is here today, but it's really rude to not meet him. After looking at Wang Tu's body and the 2 women, he continued, if A Bao had to tell him, I didn't expect it. Su Zonghui was so daring to come to our pavilion and kill Wang Tu in the busy city. Sun Jun just went to Su's house? Can you find out where Su Zhong fled to? According to the young man in the city, he should have fled to Su County. Only his old mother and his younger brother are in his house, and there is no clue. Are these 2 women Wang Tu's wives and daughters? Huang Zhong replied, yes. Wang Tu's wife and daughter were all focused on Wang Tu, and wept endlessly, ignoring Sun Zhen's return. Huang Zhong walked over, sighed, and said, don't cry. Master Ting Sun is back. Get up first and speak slowly if you have anything to say. It was good that he didn't remind him. When he reminded him, the older woman immediately raised her body. The newcomer was only Sun Zhen, who was obviously Chief Ting. She rushed over, grabbed Sun Zhen's feet, and kowtowed and cried, Jun Ting! Jun Ting! The concubine-in-law was fine when he went out in the morning, but he was killed in the afternoon. When he died, he left the concubine orphans and widows behind. What should I do in this day? Ting Jun, please be the master of the concubine. Sun Zhen took 2 steps back, broke her feet out of her hands, bent over to help her up, and said, the murderer may have fled Ta County, this case needs to be reported to the county temple, how to deal with it is entirely up to the county magistrate. Order. But don't worry, I will definitely cooperate with the county's order. The woman kowtowed again and again, weeping. Sun Zhenfu said warmly again, "It's getting late, and it's inconvenient to travel after the curfew. You go back first. I'll send someone to the county center to report the case. If you hurry, someone will come down from the county tomorrow. I'll ask you guys about the situation. When you go back, don't go out, just wait at home, okay?" Hearing his cry and watching his sad face, even the cold-blooded person will feel sorry for him. Sun Zhen said in his heart, if it's all about love and reason, Su Zhong should be arrested and brought to justice. But, sigh. Although he didn't know what the county meant, at least he had decided to open the door to Su Zhong, and now he will pity them again. It was also useless, Wang Tu is dead, and people can't be resurrected from the dead. If there is a chance, just help them more in the future. While thinking about it, he took out some more money, handed it to Huang Zhong, and said, "Her 2 women, lost in this tragic incident, can't let them go back alone, you give them a ride. Wang Tu is dead, I heard that many relatives of her family have died in the epidemic, and they are afraid that their livelihood will be difficult in the future. You give them this money. Although not much, it is better than nothing." Huang Zhong responded, picked up the older woman, greeted Wang Tu's daughter, and persuaded them for a while before leaving with them. Wang Tu's body was left in the pavilion, waiting for the people from the county to inspect it. Sun Zhen's actions fell into the eyes of Du Mai, and Du Mai praised, "Sun Jun is kind, and the Wang family is very lucky." Only Sun Zhen left the money in the Su family and sent it to the Wang family. One was for a big plan and the other was out of sympathy. He didn't explain, and said, "The killing of a thief is a major case, and it cannot be delayed. It needs to be reported to the county as soon as possible. Du Jun, will you work hard for you to go to the county? Du Mai is seeking theft, not only has the responsibility of catching theft and preparing for theft, but also has the responsibility to report to the Chief Justice of the county when a criminal case occurs in the pavilion." Although the night was approaching and the night road was inconvenient, he could not refuse his duty, and readily agreed. "Wait a minute, I will write you a certificate so that you can prepare for the inquiries along the pavilion and entering the city after the curfew." Sun Zhen went to the backyard to write an official document and handed it over to Du Mai, and said, "This is a 10-mile drive to the county, it's getting dark, and it's not safe for you to travel alone at night. I'll lend you a horse, you can find someone to go with you." Var. Before Sun Zhen came, there was only one old horse in the pavilion. Du Mai used to ride it to inspect the pavilion, and it was not enough for 2 people. Du Mai thanked him and called Fan Tan, one of the Fan family brothers. The 2 of them didn't wait for dinner, they led the horse out of the pavilion, and rushed to the county in the face of the twilight. Just like the county officials, the people in the pavilion also eat and live in the pavilion during working hours, and are not allowed to go home. Usually, Huang Zhong is in charge of cooking, and everyone in Chengyan can only eat, not cook. Huang Zhong wasn't there at the moment, but Sun Zhen didn't mind cooking, but when he first took office, he was in a big case. His big plan to save his life in troubled times, the freshness of the first pavilion chief, Su Zongren's reputation for filial piety, the tragic state of Wang Tu's corpse on the street, and the sad appearance of Wang Tu's wife and daughter, and even after the case is reported, who will the county government send? When he came down, how should he deal with it? All kinds of things were intertwined in his mind, his thoughts were chaotic, he didn't even feel hungry, and of course he was not interested in cooking. He instructed Cheng Yan, Chen Bao and Fan Shang to move Wang Tu's body to the corner of the wall, cover it with a mat, put away the tools, boards and ropes used by the pavilion chief for law enforcement. She sat at the door of the courtyard. The twilight gradually deepened, and there were fewer pedestrians on the official road. Occasionally, those who hurried past the gate of the house were no longer travelers passing by, but farmers returning home from the fields. The red sun sets in the west, burning the clouds in the sky red. The fertile and green fields are connected with the distant forests and mountains. Under the twilight, it is a little quiet and a little lonely. The wind was as cool as water, 3 or 2 sparrows flew by chirping, and smoke curled up in the lichen within sight. Cheng Yan, Chen Bao, and Fan Shang approached and squatted by the stool. Cheng Yan and Chen Bao had already met Sun Zhen, but Fan Shang had just met and looked at him secretly with curiosity. In the face of the future Shang Guan, the 3 of them wanted to say something, but Sun Zhen just sat quietly looking at the wilderness, and they didn't know how to speak or where to start. In the end, Cheng Yan couldn't help it. He had nothing to say, so he broke the silence and asked, Jun Sun, have you always lived in the city? Right. Coming to our country place, do you get used to it? What's wrong with it? To be honest, the pavilion is bigger than my house. Unlike Cheng Yan, Chen Bao carefully observed Sun Zhen's expression before speaking, and then said, Sun Zhen, I have something to ask or not. What? You are a son of the Sun family. Although the villain has no knowledge, he also knows the high name of the monarch's family. Why don't you work in the county, but come to be a pavilion chief? Isn't it the same where you work? Fan Shang disapproved, widened his sunken eyes, raised his nose, and said, how can it be the same? Working in the county, you have a decent salary and a lot of salary. How much is the head of the pavilion? It's barely enough for food. If you work in the county, at least you are 100-stone official. When he said decent, well-paid, 100-stone official, his face was full of admiration. You're right, but that's not my ambition. Ambition? Chen Bao, Cheng Yan, and Fan Shang looked at each other in dismay. The respectable county official was unwilling to do it, and was willing to be a pavilion chief who welcomed the delivery and had complicated things. What kind of ambition is this? I've only heard of people walking up high, but I've never heard of people walking down low. This new chief pavilion is really interesting. Cheng Yan was rough and couldn't hide his thoughts. With an expression of disapproval on his face, he almost said the words, does your ambition be to be a pavilion chief? Chen Bao is a master of gambling, with a more refined mind, and asked cautiously, so, what is Sun Zhen's ambition? Sun Zhen was silent for a moment, looked at the sky and the setting sun, and recited, Suxing sleeps at night, not born by Er. It is clear and wise, so as to protect his body. Chen Bao, Cheng Yan, and Fan Shang had never read a book, so they could not understand. Cheng Yan scratched the scar on his face and asked, Sun Zhen, what did you say? I didn't understand. What do you mean? These lines are all from the Book of Songs. The meaning of the first 2 sentences is, when you get up early and go to bed late, think about it, don't be sorry for your life. Linked together, Sun Zhen is saying, it's not easy for me to be a human being in 2 lifetimes. It's going to be a troubled world, and I must try my best to save my life. Of course, Sun Zhen couldn't explain this to them. He just stared at the setting sun and kept silent. When twilight is at its extreme, night falls. The light night is like a gauze, covering the earth. Huang Zhong returned to the pavilion, met the 3 people at the door, and said in surprise, why are you all staying at the door? Sun Jun, I sent Wang Tu's wife and daughter back, it's really pitiful, I cried all the way. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com can't be persuaded. I told Li Kui and her neighbors to take care of them and don't let anything happen again. The pastoral scenery after nightfall is even quieter. After sitting at the door for a while, and talking to Cheng Yan, Chen Bao, and Fan Shang for a while, Sun Zhen's mood calmed down. He exhaled a turbid breath, no longer thinking about Su Zhong, no longer thinking about Wang Tu and his wife and daughter, no longer thinking about his own big plan, and no longer thinking about the knowable and unknowable future, and said, thank you for your hard work. Duke Huang, don't forget to close the door. I'm going to sleep first. Stop eating. Not hungry. Eat. Huang Zhong was inexplicable. After Sun Zhen entered the backyard, he asked Cheng Yan, Chen Bao, and Fan Shang, what did you just say to Sun Jun? How do you see him in a trance and lowness? I didn't say anything, so I just chatted a few words. When it comes to aspiration, by the way, Lao Huang, you have read the book, Wake Up is also charming, 5 days to live, what does it mean? What a mess! Huang Zhong had only read literacy textbooks such as Ji Ju Pian, and had no idea what Cheng Yan was talking about. Sun Jun just arrived, you don't know how to serve more, and you haven't lit candles yet. Black lights are blinding fire. After a few words, he called Cheng Yan again, Ian, Sun Jun doesn't know if he can find the burnt stone. You go and see it and help. Burnt stone, that is, flint, is used for making fire. The candles were lit, the chickens were commotion, and then the pots and pans in the kitchen sounded. It didn't take long for the fragrant rice to fill the courtyard. Huang Zhong closed the door of the house, and he and Cheng Yan, Chen Bao, and Fan Shang were in the courtyard covered in moonlight and starlight, eating, drinking, talking and laughing. The chatter and laughter spread far and wide in the night, and it also spread into the quiet backyard and into Sun Zhen's ears. The moon is bending over Kyushu, and some families are happy and some are sad. With different thoughts, people ended the day's activities, and the first day of Sun Zhen's inauguration ended like this. Late at night, the moonlight shone into the room, like a bed of stagnant water. Sun Zhen blew out the oil lamp and lay down on the bed with her clothes on. The bed was made of elm wood, strong and durable, about 8 feet long, and very spacious. There is a linen seat on the top, because the autumn night is cold, a layer of mattress is placed on the seat, and I lie on it. I don't feel that the bed is hard, and it is very comfortable. Huang Zhong in the front yard and the others are still talking, and they can be heard from time to time. He lay down for a while, without any sleepiness, he simply got up, removed the saddle-shaped wooden pillow, and sat by the head of the bed with the quilt. The bedroom is on the inner side of the main room, facing the big elm tree in the courtyard. The windows were not closed, and the clear moonlight and the swirling leaves could be seen through the curtain over the bed. The night wind blew into the room, and the curtains rose and fell. The moon rises and sets, and the sun and the moon divide. The master once sighed on the river, the deceased is like a gentleman, and he does not give up day and night. In the previous life, although Sun Zhen didn't talk about the years of traveling, he never felt that time was urging people, but after the time traveled, he felt urgency all the time. Su Zhong, Wang Tu's wife and daughter, what happened today is over, he has officially assumed the post of pavilion chief, what should I do tomorrow? Today is the first day of inauguration. Except for Su Zhong who did not think of killing people, everything else is still on schedule. Everyone in the pavilion has seen it and is generally familiar with it. The people in the pavilion also knew a few. But these are naturally far from enough for his big plan. What should be done next? He studied from Sun Quan since he was a child, but he read the scriptures and the law. He never learned how to be a pavilion, and no one taught him how to save his life in a troubled world. Ting Chong is good. Before taking office, he did his homework, flipped through historical books, and based on what he heard, he concluded, as long as he can punish the violent and help the weak, save the people's labor, educate customs, promote learning and stop evil, and be prudent and frugal, by persuading the people to do farming and mulberry farming, they can become a good pavilion chief. But preserving life in troubled times is difficult. No one taught him, and he had no experience. After repeated consideration, for the time being, it seems that there are only 4 words: prestige, money. Taking an official career, being an official, in charge of the government of one party, and shepherding the people of one place, of course, can enhance prestige and gather money, but how to do it specifically? He also thought about it, but it is nothing more than just and strict, and exercising kindness. As long as you insist on doing this, when the heat arrives, you will have your own prestige. But the problem is, although these 8 characters are the right way, they are to retreat and the effect is very slow. Zheng Duo said to him, everyone in the pavilion is an old man. Du Mai and Cheng Yan are both brave and capable of convincing strong heroes. The Fan brothers are local natives, familiar with people and places. Chen Bao open-minded, although he likes to gamble, he does not care about money and goods, but he can win people's hearts. Huang Zhong is very old and he is valued by the villagers. If you can convince these people, you will naturally have prestige in the pavilion, and the pavilion will not be difficult to manage. Already. This is a pragmatic approach. From top to bottom, first convince the people in the pavilion, and then use their prestige in the pavilion to convince the people. Although it is not the right way, as long as the way is right, the effect will be very fast. Sun Zhen recalled the process of meeting the people of Tingxi. Begging for thieves Du Mai only met once. Although they talked, they were all about business affairs, and they didn't know his temperament and preferences. Brother Fan, the eldest Fan Tan, has only met once. He didn't even speak a word, and he didn't know each other. He had a few words with the second brother Fan Shang, but he couldn't talk about understanding. He just felt that he envied the county the status and treatment of Chinese officials. Father Ting Huang Zhong, according to half a day's observation, is indeed honest and a real person. Among them, he was the most respectful in his words and the most restrained in his actions. Cheng Yan and Chen Bao, their behavior in gathering a crowd to gamble, and their behavior, words and deeds at the gate of the house in the evening were all watched by Sun Zhen silently. Everyone has different status and different personalities. If you want to convince them, where should you start? He didn't think about it originally, but Cheng Yan and Chen Bao's gambling together gave him inspiration. Since the beginning of the Han dynasty, gambling has been prevalent, up to the emperor and nobles, down to the streets and markets, no one is bad. Although it is prohibited by law, it is not strictly enforced in most cases. At that time, people called gambling as a game of gambling, not necessarily for money, but also for alcohol. When Emperor Jing of the former Han dynasty was the prince, he and Prince Wu had a gamble and bet on wine, and they had a conflict because of struggling for the way, that is, competing for the chess path. In a rage, Emperor Jing raised the chessboard and killed Prince Wu. Prince Wu's father, Liu Bai, the king of Wu who later started the Seven Kingdoms Rebellion. Liang Ji, a domineering general in the reign of Emperor Ji and Emperor Huan of the current dynasty, wrote a book called The Classic of Playing Chess. Playing chess, a game that imitates kazoo, can also be used for gambling. There are also many folks who use blogging as a cover-up. Bo, 6 bo, cover, meaning money, a way of gambling. Some of the common people even made a fortune because of this, such as Huan Fa, who was written into the historical records by Sima Qian. In such a big environment, Cheng Yan and Chen Bao are good at gambling, not to mention that Huang Zhong, Du Mai and Fan's brothers will definitely be interested even if they are not good. Although Sun Zhen had no interest in gambling, his knowledge of Boji was far better than that at the time. At present, there are only a few ways to play games, such as liubo, chess, and playing chess. At most, you can add cockfighting, walking horses, and running dogs. Where is there a great variety of posterity? If nothing else, there are only 2 types of cards, mahjong, which are called big killers. These 2 things are well made. For example, for playing cards, bamboo leaves and leaves are enough. For mahjong, it is carved out of stone. Sun Zhen can conclude that as long as these 2 things are taken out, Chen Bao and Cheng Yan will be pleasantly surprised. Not only that, it will definitely be popular in the countryside. In this way, not only can the relationship with the people in the pavilion be closer, but also the villagers can know its name. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. However, everything has pros and cons. After the matter spreads, it may also bring some negative effects. Maybe there will be scholars who think that he has ruined the folk customs, which is not in line with the duties of the pavilion chief. It doesn't matter, he can justify, "I didn't intend to gamble." In fact, among the various ways of playing games that are currently popular, there are some that are considered elegant, such as playing chess, elegant opera. The big deal, he can create chess. First, Liu Bo is the predecessor of chess. Chess is a combination of military strategy and is very suitable for scholars and officials to play, but because it was born out of Liu Bo, Cheng Yan, Chen Bao, and others would not find it unpleasant. The moon is in the middle of the sky, and before you know it, the night is getting late. The chatter and laughter in the front yard stopped at some point, and Huang Zhong and others may have gone back to the house and fell asleep. The night was silent, and there was no sound everywhere. Sun Zhen thought to herself mockingly, "In order to save my life, the first big thing I did was to invent playing cards, mahjong, and chess. After thinking about it, after these things are made, there will be more than if it is popular now, it will definitely be passed on to future generations. I don't know if future generations will say something when they open the poker table or play against the Chu and Han people. The person who invented this thing is also Sun Zhen in the Eastern Han dynasty. Hehe, it is also considered the name will be passed down to future generations, and it will be left in the history." It was late at night, maybe because he had changed to a new place, maybe because he was about to start struggling, but he still had no sleepiness. Raising prestige is important, but not the only one. The Yellow Turban uprising was huge. In order to be more secure, he felt that there were other things that had to be done at the same time. That is, it is necessary to find out how many followers of Taiping Dao there are in Benting and this township. Due to the epidemic, Taiping Road spreads very fast, especially in recent years. There are believers in almost every populated place. When he was in the city, he worked hard in this area. Although he couldn't know the number of his followers, he basically knew who the leaders of the Taiping Road in the city were. Now that I'm in the pavilion, of course I can't relax in this regard, and we must continue to investigate. I've been exhausted, haven't I? Sun Zhen pondered back and forth for a while, and felt that the things that needed to be busy at the moment were almost the same. The plan has been set, and the future has a direction. The tight strings loosened slightly, the fatigue of the day came up, and soon, he fell asleep. He fell asleep, but Huang Zhong, Cheng Yan, Chen Bao, and Fan Sheng in the front yard didn't fall asleep, they just moved into the room from the yard. There are 3 rooms in the front yard, and there is no one in the middle hall. Du Mai and Fan's brothers share a room, and Huang Zhong's 3 share a room. In addition to going to Du Mai and Fan Tan in the county, there are 4 people at the moment. Fan Sheng didn't sleep either, sitting cross-legged in Huang Zhong's room, and the 4 of them were talking about each other. Sun Zhen was pondering how to gather all the people, and the topics discussed by the people did not leave Sun Zhen. The candles had been lit for a long time, and the smell was choking. They did not light the lights, and they talked in a low voice with the help of the moonlight outside the window. Although Sun Jun is a son of a famous family, from today's point of view, he is not arrogant, but rather kind. It was Huang Zhong who spoke. Cheng Yan smiled and said, "Not only is it kind, but it's also weird." Huang Zhong puzzled, "Why is it weird?" "Leave the county officials inappropriate, and come to be a pavilion chief." Huang Zhong didn't know the conversation between Cheng Yan and Sun Zhen in front of the courtyard, but he was very dissatisfied with Cheng Yan's attitude and said, "Don't talk about it again." "Woolen cloth." Cheng Yan smiled. Chen Bao said, "Speaking of which, Sun Jun is indeed different from Zheng Jun. After all, he is from a famous family, and looks like a learned person. It sounds like poetry." "Lao Huang, among the few of us, you are the only one who can read books, but you haven't read poetry, right? It's quite a lot to have knowledge and a well-known background, but to be a pavilion chief. Strange." Seeing Chen Bao talking like this, Huang Zhong became anxious. "Didn't I tell you not to criticize Shang Guan? Why do you say that?" He said worriedly, "Sun Jun is peaceful, but you shouldn't mess around." The more friendly people are, the more terrifying you are when you are angry. Don't hit the knife edge. Fan Shangben also wanted to make a few comments, but seeing that Huang Zhong was in a hurry, he changed the subject and said, "Did you see that? Sun Jun is carrying a knife, not a sword, so he doesn't look like a Confucian scholar. Swordsman, gentlemen, armed equipment, many scholars wear swords, but not many people wear swords." Cheng Yan said, "He rides very neatly and dismounts very quickly, as if he had been trained." They grew up in the countryside and worked in the pavilion. Apart from seeing the demeanor of children of famous families when passing, high-ranking officials came to stay for the night. Yuyuganshu www.yuyuganshu.com had no chance to contact famous people at all. In other words, sons in the class they belonged to was considered superior to them, and they had a strong curiosity about famous families, but now another children of famous families came to serve as the pavilion chief, and it was inevitable that they would discuss Sun Zhen's words and deeds. Huang Zhong is old and has a lot of experience, and he always acts with three-point care first. Seeing that he has said it twice in a row, Cheng Yan and the others are still talking about Sun Zhen, and they get angry. "Tell me. Speak. Sun, you come from a famous family, so what's so strange about riding a horse? Don't say it anymore. Ah Shang, it's getting late, you should go back to your room to sleep." Chen Bao yawned, I know. Thinking of something, I originally said that I would invite Sun Jun for a drink tonight, but I forgot about Su Zhong's trouble. How about tomorrow, what do you think?" Huang Zhong and Cheng Yan had no opinion. Cheng Yan was impatient, so he got up and touched the money in the clothes hanging on the ring nails to make up. Fans hang but hesitant. Several people have been in the pavilion for many years, and they know each other well. Cheng Yan said impatiently, "Come on, don't act like this. You don't need to pay." He snorted and said disdainfully, "Take it lightly. Money is important to righteousness, how can you value money?" Fan Shang blushed, but fortunately, it was covered by the night. He stood up hastily and said, "You guys can talk, I'll go to bed." Cheng Yan insisted, "If you say that they are all in the same pavilion, why is there such a big difference? Lao Huang and A Bao, do you think so?" He touched the money and handed it to Chen Bao. Chen Bao chuckled lightly, didn't answer, didn't take the money, and said, "I won a little in the afternoon, I'll pay the money." Huang Zhong was sincere, changed the subject, and said, "It's getting late, it's time to go to bed." Du Jun rushed to the county center to report the case overnight. "Maybe people from the county will come tomorrow, so we have to keep our spirits up." At about noon the next day, Du Mai and Fan Tan came back, along with them were the county thief Cao and the prison history. The thief Cao was named Qin Gan, and the prison history was named Lu Ru. After examining Wang Tu's body, Qin Gan showed the county magistrate's order and said, "Su Zhong murdered in a busy city, and the impact was extremely bad. The magistrate takes this seriously. Sun Qing, where are the reporter and the sufferer in this case? According to the law, only the county court has the legislative power, that is to say, the reporter should go to the county court to report the case. However, because some counties are very large and the journey is long and inconvenient, it is also possible to report the case in the nearest village. However, since Qin Gan and Lu Ru are here, they must still meet the reporter, otherwise, they will not even be able to write the Yuan Shu." The name of the person reporting the case is Shi Juxian, who belongs to the household of Benting. The bitter master is Wang Tu's wife and daughter. "Please wait a moment, Lord Qin, and I will send someone to find them." He invited Qin and Lu to sit down in the hall in the backyard first, ordered Huang Zhong to bring tea and water, and then came to the front yard and called Cheng Yan and Chen Bao. "Qin Jun wants to see Shi Juxian and Wang Tu's wife and daughter, you right away, go and find them." The two agreed, led the horses and left, and as soon as they walked out of the courtyard gate of the pavilion, Sun Zhen chased after them again, shouting, "Wait! What else is there to order, Sun Jun? The county lord not only sent thieves, but also the prison history. After seeing Shi Juxian and Wang Tu's wife and daughter, he will definitely go to Su Zhong's house. Su's mother is old and can't be scared. Su Ji asked yesterday. I don't want to tell her about Su Zhong's murder for a while, it's a filial piety, which is touching, and Su Ji once learned from my clan father, so I can't help but help. Well, you two go separately, Ian go to Shi Juxian and Wang Tu's wife and daughter, Bao goes to Su's house and tells Su Ji, ask Su's mother to go out and avoid. The thieves and prison officials are relatively important judicial officials in the county, and they each have their own responsibilities when it comes to work. Case examination, that is, investigation, evidence collection, etc. is usually under the control of the thief, while the property of the criminal is under the control of the prison history. If it is only for investigation and evidence collection, prison history will not come. Sun Zhen has already made the decision to open the door to Su Zhong in order to see Kathao Sandala city horse bones. Although he cannot control the activities of the county government, it is also a gesture and a gesture of goodwill to inform the Su family in advance. Chen Bao patted his forehead with a sound of oops, and said with deep conviction, yes. The prison history is obviously here to seal the Su family. Mother Su is old, and she didn't know it beforehand. So, maybe I can't stand the excitement and something happens. Don't worry, Sun Jun, the villain will handle this matter well. Cheng Yan and Chen Bao drove their horses and parted ways. Shi Juxian came soon, but Wang Tu's wife and daughter were long gone. It wasn't until Cheng Yan came back that he knew, Wang's wife was overwhelmed with grief, she was ill, and it was difficult to get up from bed. I was afraid she would not be able to come to the pavilion. Qin Gan is a well-known capable official in the county and a confidant of the magistrate. He is very responsible and sympathetic. He simply said, since this is the case, there is no need to force her to come. I will go to her house to ask questions. Lu Ru interjected and said, this case is very clear and there is nothing suspicious about it. Qin Jun, in order to save time, you can start to hunt down the thief as soon as possible, and how about bringing the husband along the way? It is convenient to go to Su Jiafeng later. Investigate. When the criminal's property is sealed up, the local Chiang husband must be present. Qiangfu is the mayor of the township. Qin Jian had a higher status, so Lu Ru used a negotiating tone. Qin Jian said, that's how it should be. Shang Guan moved his mouth, and Xiaoguan broke his leg. Naturally, Cheng Yan had to do the job of finding Qiangfu, but this time there was no horse to ride, because Sun Zhen wanted to accompany Qin and Lu to Wang Tu's house. Yingchuan County is located in the Central Plains and is densely populated. As a pavilion in the territory, there are also many households in Fanyang Pavilion, more than 300 households and more than 1,000 people, which is a township in a remote area on the top. There are 6 li in the pavilion. Wang Tu's family lived in Nanpingli, south of the pavilion, about 3 or 4 miles away. When Qin and Lu came, they were riding in a chariot. There was a horse in front of them. It was not big, with no curtains and no curtains. Sun Zhen accompanied him on horseback. As a thief, Du Mai also had to follow him. Last night, he was on the road in the middle of the night, and he woke up early this morning. It was a long journey back and forth for 80 to 90 miles. However, in order to make a good impression on Qin and Lu, he still gritted his teeth and looked energetic, holding a shield in one hand and a short halberd in the other, holding his chest high and striding forward. Qin Gan said with admiration, after half a day and one night, I travelled for nearly 100 miles, but I was still stunned, but I didn't feel tired. Sun Qing, this thief in your pavilion is majestic. Qin Jiannian has a 40-year-old face, a face with a Chinese character, a black beard, and a dignified appearance. Sun Zhen heard of his name a long time ago, not only because he was a confidant of the county magistrate, but also because he had traveled thousands of miles to Bahai and studied hard for many years under Zheng Xuanmen, known as Jing Shen. To such a senior who is knowledgeable and far above him, he did not dare to neglect. He controlled the reins, and was half a parking space behind the truck, and said humbly, "I was the first local pavilion chief, and I will need Du Jun's help in the future. I hope that the pavilion can be managed well, and there will be no more murders by thieves like Su Zhong." With Qin Gan's approval and Sun Zhen's attention, Du Mai was very happy, raised his head and became more brave and majestic. Qin Gan smiled and said, "Sun Qing is too modest. Although Su Zhong's case is bad, you only came to take office yesterday, and it has nothing to do with you. Today before me and Lu Jun came, the county lord said to both of us, all the sons of the Sun family, Zhonggaiu, Wenruo, and Gongda are all outstanding talents in the prefectures. Zairuo, Yoruo, Jiu, and Bokai are also handsome for a while. Zhenzi is an outstanding talent, and he is not too small. This is a strange ambition and a strange festival. Given time, it will surely make the place stable. I told the two of us not to be arrogant and rude. Zhenzi is the character of Sun Zhen. Zhonggaiu, Wenruo, Gongda, etc., are the characters of several Sun family children. Among them, Wenruo is the character of Sun Yu. Gongda is the word of Sun Yu. These people were all descendants of the same generation as Sun Zhen or a generation lower than him, and they were all famous. Although Sun Zhen asked himself to be the pavilion chief, it was incomprehensible, but in view of Sun's face, up to the county magistrate, down to Qin Gan, he was still very polite, and he was not regarded as a low servant. Of course, this is also related to Sun Zhen's Kizi, Kija. Lu Ru said, "Sun Qing is not willing to be a literate official who can do practical work, but you and Mr. Zhongtong have a good relationship." The dialogue has spread all over the county, and they all praise you for not admiring a false name. The thorns are not inhabited by the phoenix, and the road to the great virtuous is not 100 miles. Chu Jizi is not unique to Chen Lu. Zhongtong is the character of Sun Chu. Chu Jizi, Ming Lan, and Sun Zhen mentioned his example when they persuaded Sun Chu. The thorns are not inhabited by the phoenix, and the road to the great virtuous is not 100 miles is the word of Chu Lan's Shang Guan praised him. Lu Ru was a native of Yingyan and a son of the Lu family, so he said, "Zhou Jizi is not unique to Chen Lu." Sun Zhen said in his heart, "I only told brother Zhong and the Xianjun about these words, and no one knew about them. Why did they spread all over the county all of a sudden?" After thinking for a while, I guessed the reason. Brother Zhong is broad-minded, he will not talk too much. It must be that the county lord is afraid of being misunderstood by people as a harsh famous family, so he spread my words to dismiss me as the pavilion chief. It's embarrassing, hee. I didn't expect that there would be times when I would be named alongside Sun Yu and Sun Yu. Although he was side by side with Sun Yu and Sun Yu, he didn't mean much joy. Once he has self-knowledge, what kind of characters are Sun Yu and Sun Yu? He can't compare. Secondly, Chief Ting is a lowly position after all, and I have never heard of any disciple of a famous family who asks for it. Qin Gan, Lu Ru, including the county magistrate and others, said that, they seemed to praise them, but what did they think in their hearts? Nobody knows. He said in a panic, Jun Qin is Mr. Kong Cheng's high-ranking apprentice, Jun Lu has a family background, and there are elders in the clan who have been praised twice and are famous in the prefecture and county. I am a younger generation, and I speak out loud because of my youth and ignorance. You are already satisfied with the reprimand, how dare you ask for the approval of the princes? Kong Cheng, Yu reading www.yuuganju.com is Zheng Xian. Lu Ru's clan uncle Lu Yi and Lu Zixiang were benevolent and generous, and the brothers of Runan Su Shao and Su Jing once praised him greatly in the Yuan Review. Regardless of whether the admiration for Sun Zhen is true or false, Lu Ru was always very proud to hear that Sun Zhen admired his relatives, so he also threw papaya for it and repaid it with Kaiyang Yao, smiling, Su Zi will comment on the fathers of Qing's clan, Siming and Shusai Kunzhong, said, both of them are jade. It is true that no one can surpass the Su. Siming and Shusai are both characters in the 8 dragons of the Sun family. At that time, the atmosphere was good, and Zhangfu was given a title of algae, among which Su and Guo had the greatest influence. Su is Su Zijiang in Su, Guo is Guo Linzong who has passed away. The reputation of the scholars was ruined by their words. Those who are praised quickly become famous all over the world, and those who are despised are despised. Sun and Lu Ershi are well known all over the world. Sun Zhen and Lu Ru are just enough to fight each other, and they are satisfied with each other. Qin Gan's family background is not enough to mention, but there are teachers like Zheng Xian who can make up for any shortcomings, and he has traveled thousands of miles and has extensive knowledge. The Yuan commentary led to the conversation, and the 3 of them sometimes talked about some interesting stories of famous people from other counties, and sometimes discussed the scholars from this county, and the atmosphere was very harmonious. The 3 of them rode on horseback, chatting and laughing, and Du Mai trotted behind them, unable to get in a word. Not only was he unable to talk, he didn't even understand what they were talking about. He watched Sun Zhen riding on the horse, chatting with Qin and Lu with a smile, while no one watched the heroic that he made. Do not feel lost. The gulf between the literati and the Qian Shao was insurmountable. Unconsciously, everyone came to Nanpingli. I have uploaded several portraits and copies of the Han Dynasty on Weibo. Children's shoes can take a look if they are interested. I have shared several pictures of pavilion lengths, residential styles, chariots, fairs, bazaars, and old people. Weibo address, /Wozhizayajiu. The conversation on the road is just the most common conversation among scholars. That is to say, Sun Zhen was born in the Sun clan, otherwise Qin Gan and Lu Ru would not have lowered their worth and had an equal dialogue with him as a Ting Chong. When they came to Nanpingli, the 3 of them waited at the entrance of the entrance, and when Du Mai found the local head, they left the car and horse outside the entrance and continued on their way. In Sun Zhen's observation, he saw that the road, size, and layout of the buildings were similar to those in the Dawangli. People come and go from time to time, trees are planted by the roadside, and children play under the trees. Qin Gan said, last year there was a big epidemic, and the dead were lying on their backs. The former pavilion chief Zheng Duo gave timely medicine and effective treatment. He was the best in this year's exam and was promoted to the county. I haven't been to Fanyang for a long time. Looking at it today, it should be called excellent. Lu Ru said, yes. A few days ago, I also heard Duke Hu of Tingrong talk about Fanyang. He said that he traveled all over the county, and there were many people who died of illness in various townships and Lizhong. Only the people of Fanyangting lived in peace, as if they were not affected by last year. It seems that the epidemic has affected it. Zheng Duo, as the pavilion chief, has saved lives and people, and he has done a great job. Lu Ru encouraged Sun Zhen and said, Zheng Duo can achieve such achievements with only a little knowledge of words. Sun Jun, who was born in a famous family and has extraordinary ambitions, will definitely be far better than him. They all wore official robes and seals, and all the people who came and went gave in and saluted. Qin Gan pointed to the children playing under the tree, and said, although Zheng Duo has been credited with saving lives, he is not enough to educate. Now it's September, and the busy farming season is over, why are there still so many children who haven't gone to school? Woolen cloth. The rear said with a smile, when Zhen Jun was here, he also urged him many times, but the villagers can only see the small profits in front of them and hope that the children can help raise livestock, tidy vegetables, exchange some money, or collect dung firewood, dig wild vegetables, and talk to make up for it. It is a family, so not many are willing to send their children to school. Qin Gan said, the proverb goes, the gold of the leftover is not as good as the scriptures. Even if the money is more, so what? If you don't know the words of the sages, how can you stand on the world? Money will run out one day, only scriptures can be used for a lifetime. By posterity. The chief said, yes, yes. Qin Gan was very clear about public and private, and he was laughing and laughing in small talk. When he talked about public affairs, he said to Sun Zhen seriously, I have heard the story of Mr. Zongtong's self-invitation to read for a long time. Virtue, you should know the importance of education, and you will need to put more effort into this aspect in the future. Sun Zhen replied, yes. He didn't say much, but he observed very carefully. He had already seen that although there were a lot of people in the interior, the economic situation was basically the same as that of Dawang Li. Most of the people entering and leaving the Li have dishes on their faces, clothes, and shoes, and the stronger ones have multiple scarves to wrap their heads and only a few patches on their clothes. Not many. He said in his heart, after years of disasters, epidemics, and serious mergers, the imperial court is still rushing to levy, the local area is fierce as a tiger, the people have worked hard for a year, but the income is not enough to make ends meet, and the people are not living. The poor people who have no money sell their fields and houses, their wives and children, and if they sell out everything, they will sell themselves. How can they go to school and read the scriptures if they can't even eat? After he traveled, in order to familiarize himself with the situation of the times, he went to the neighboring villages for investigation and research. What he heard and saw was shocking. Sometimes when he wakes up from a nightmare in the middle of the night, he can't help but feel fortunate. Fortunately, he has traveled through the Sun family. In more than 10 years, there have been 2 major epidemics. For more than 10 years, there have been continuous floods and severe droughts in various places, and the locust plague in 7 states has almost spread to the whole world. Compared with other counties, Yingchuan is pretty good. Sun Zhen listened to the clansman who had traveled abroad and said, you don't get older than you are, the people are hungry, they are displaced from the countryside, and they die on the side of the road, just like 20 years ago. More than 20 years ago, there was a major flood and locust plague, which affected a third of the counties in the country. Hundreds of thousands of households went bankrupt and wandered outside. The situation today is similar to that, which shows how hard the Qian Shao in the world is. Sun Zhen was afraid of the Yellow Turban uprising because he was afraid of death. He was afraid of death because at least he had something to eat and something to wear. However, after learning more and more about the situation of the times, and seeing more and more people living in poverty and lack of food, while the rich and the noble are living in hundreds of houses and having food and fine clothes, he couldn't help thinking, what about the common people? Can you rise up and rebel? Sun Zhen heard a folk song sung by the children in the city, the hair is like a leek, and it is cut and reborn, the head is like a chicken, and it is cut and reborn. The officials do not need to be fearful, and the common people should never be taken lightly. Many years ago, before he crossed over, I read this ballad when I was in school, but I didn't feel much at the time, but now I feel the same when I hear it. He clearly heard the darkness of the times and the unwillingness of the people. He still remained respectful, half a step behind Qin Gan and Lu Ru, while recalling what he had heard and witnessed in the past. While listening to Qin Gan's instructions, he said yes, but he couldn't help sighing, thinking, Qin Qunzu having the name of a cotter, he is not an incompetent person. He studied under Zhang Xian, doesn't he know the truth of Kang Ling knows the etiquette? I don't think so, it should be because he was born in Sri Lanka, grew up in Sri Lanka, from childhood to adulthood, ordinary people have lived like this, so they are used to it. Under the leadership of the chief, everyone quickly arrived outside Wang Tu's house. Wang Tu sells meat for a living, and his living conditions are much better than that of ordinary people. There are more than a dozen houses around, and his house is the tallest. The chief knocked on the door, and it was Wang Tu's daughter who opened the door. Seeing that it was Sun Zhen leading the officials, she hurriedly paid her respects. Subai is a woman's etiquette. When men bow down, they have to touch the ground with their hands, while women usually do not have to do so, which is called subai. Wang Tu's daughter was young, 13 or 14 years old. She cried for about a night, her eyes were red and swollen. When she was in the pavilion yesterday, Sun Zhen didn't pay attention to her. At this time, it seemed that although she was not tall and her skin was a little dark, she was beautiful and beautiful. Qin Gan asked her to get up and sighed, "It's really pitiful that I'm young and lost my parents. I'm a thief in the county, and I'm here for Nai Weng's case. Is your mother at home?" "Yes." Wang Tu's daughter is young and has little knowledge. She lowered her eyebrows and dared not look at people, and replied in a low voice, "Please come in." Sun Zhen asked Qin and Lu to go first and enter the gate. The Wang family's yard is much larger than the Su family's. Wang Tu specializes in dog meat, and his yard is separated from it, with people living on one side and dog bars on the other side. When people come in, the dogs bark. Not only is it noisy, but the smell is also very strong. Lu Ru frowned slightly and covered his mouth and nose with his sleeves. Wang Tu's daughter was nervous, grabbed the corner of the surcoat, and whispered to the dog bar a few times, "Stop barking! Stop barking!" But it didn't help, she was even more helpless. Qin Gan said, "Don't care about dogs, bring us into the house." At the moment, amid the barking of dogs, Wang Tu's daughter led the way and led everyone to the door of the main room. She hesitated and stood still, perhaps because she didn't know whether to bring someone in directly, or to report first. As they got closer, Sun Zhen heard a man's voice in the room and asked, "Is there someone else?" "The original teacher is invited, and he is treating the disease." The original teacher. Du Mai finally found a chance to speak, and said before the chief, "It's Yuan Pan." He asked Wang Tu's daughter, "Is it Yuan Pan?" Wang Tu's daughter lowered her head and replied, "Yes." Qin Gan asked, "Who is Yuan Pan?" "The most famous Taiping Taoist in the area." Qin Jian and Lu Ru invariably frowned and looked at each other. Sun Zhen was silent, looking past Wang Tu's daughter and looking inside the house. The door was closed, so I couldn't see clearly. Qin Gan asked Wang Tu's daughter, "Your mother suddenly fell ill. It must be because of excessive sadness and injuries to her internal organs. Why didn't you invite a medical doctor to see her?" Qin and Han followed the Zhou system and divided medicine into 4 disciplines. Internal medicine. Du Mai said with a smile, "Jun Qin is often in the county, so he doesn't know anything. I heard that this Yuan Pan is a disciple of the great Dr. Zhang Liang. He cured many people from the epidemic last year, which is quite effective." Wang Tu's daughter said timidly, "A Wang contracted a cold a few days ago, and he also invited the original teacher to treat him, and the next day will be fine." Speaking of her father, her eyes were red and she almost burst into tears. She was very pitiful. The head of the rib also echoed, "Yes, yes. The original master's talisman water is more effective than medicine. As long as you are devout and believe, no matter what kind of disease you have, you can just eat it." Qin Gan sneered twice and said, "If you pretend to be a ghost, you will also deceive fools and fools." Lu Ru also had a cold face and said, "It's a shame that the imperial court doesn't listen to the advice, indulge it, and let this generation deceive the world." Du Mai and Li Chong were not fools, they were stunned when they heard what Qin and Lu were saying, and thought, Qin and Lu Erjun seem to be very dissatisfied with the original teacher? It's strange, but why? Could it be that the original teacher offended them? Qin Gan is known as a competent official, and he is a disciple of Zheng Xian, who has both vision and knowledge. Lu Ru is a son of the Lu family. And deeply affected, I think. With this background, it is no surprise that the two have a deep aversion to Taiping Road. Sun Zhen said in her heart, "I just wanted to get a feel for the local Taiping Dao last night, and today I met the most famous local master. It's a rare opportunity, don't miss it. Ask Qin and Lu, Qin Jun, Lu Jun, do you want to go in and have a look?" All right. The lieutenant opened the door. Qin Qian held his head high and walked straight, and the rest of the crowd followed, and the group came into the room. There are 2 people in the room, 1 bedroom, and 1 station. The person standing took a 9-segmented staff and scurried around the bed, chanting words while walking. The dog barked suddenly in the outer courtyard, but he turned a deaf ear and was unaffected. The person lying on the bed was covered with a quilt, eyes closed, probably asleep and motionless. The voice of the person holding the 9-segmented staff was high and low, as if singing. The speed was too fast, and he could not understand what he was singing. He knew that Sun Zhen was waiting for him to come in, but it seemed that no one was there. Stopped and took out 2 pages of yellow paper from his sleeves. Sun Zhen's eyes snapped, and when she saw what was drawn in twists and turns, it should be a rune. The man said, "Bring me a bowl." Wang Tu's daughter had prepared something earlier, brought a pottery bowl over, and placed it on the table respectfully. The man set the rune on fire, threw it in a bowl, and when it burned to ashes, he handed it over and said, "There is a lot of magic power in this rune, which can ward off evil spirits. Add some water and feed your mother a drink. Wait. When she wakes up, she will teach her to kowtow and think about what she has done wrong, and repent to my teacher, and the disease will be cured." Wang Tu's daughter was obedient, what the original teacher said and what she listened to. After listening to a few words, Qin Gan couldn't help but asked bluntly, "How sure are you that you will use this talisman to cure diseases?" The original teacher has kind eyes and kind eyes. Although he was invited to cure the disease and save his life, his attitude towards Wang Tu's daughter was not arrogant. At this time, it was the official who asked the question, and he was not flattering. "Can be cured. I know someone. Yu Kansha www.yuyuganshu.com contracted typhoid fever last year. He also invited you to treat him, but he couldn't cure him. It couldn't be cured, it was because of his dishonesty." Then how to judge whether this is sincerity or dishonesty? There are gods who raise their heads, sincerity or dishonesty, the gods know themselves. Sun Zhen said in his heart, "It's because of sincerity that the disease is cured, but it is because of dishonesty. The sincerity or dishonesty is all judged by God. Although it is a fallacy, it is difficult to refute." Then she thought, "The dead will die. It is no wonder that Taiping Road can continue to grow and develop." Qin Qian was full of disgust, waved his sleeves and said, "Go, go." Master Yuan's cultivation was very good, and he was not angry. He explained a few words to Wang Tu's daughter, and said, "I will leave after the matter is over. Tell your mother, don't be too sad, the dead are gone, but the living are still alive. If you want to live, you can't indulge in the past, you must always look forward. Besides, the county king and gods will not let the thieves escape. If you have any difficulties, you can come to me." He bowed to Qin Gan and others before leaving. Wang Tu's daughter asked him to stay, and brought over a dozen money. He refused to accept it and said, "God has the virtue of a good life. I didn't come here for money. You have suffered misfortune, and your mother is bedridden. It is the right thing to help you. I can't take this money. Resolutely no, not a penny." Sun Zhen had heard many similar cases in the past. People from Taiping Dao cured the patient's disease, but refused to ask for money because the patient's family was poor. He was very compassionate and kind. Thinking about it, if there is nothing unique about Taiping Dao, it is not acting with compassion, and at the same time persuading people to be kind. How can the court always ignore it? If it is not considerate of public opinion, how can the people believe in religion one after another? Qin Gan and Lu Ru looked at each other with cold eyes and were unmoved. After Yuan Pan left, Qin Gan sighed, "This generation is benevolent outside and sly inside. If the current court does not care about it, it will cause disaster in the future." Although Qin Gan and Lu Ru hated Taiping Daoists, they had no choice but to say a few words without the imperial edict. Qin Gan knelt down on the seat, spread out the pen, ink, paper and inkstone he brought with him on the case, woke Wang Tu's wife, and began to question him. He had already asked Shi Juxian about the specific process of the incident, and now he is just confirming the identity and family situation of the deceased. Sun Zhen helped him polish the ink. The ink is made of lacquer smoke and pine coal, in the form of pellets. The inkstone is made of wood, the left is a closed inkstone box, which stores water, and there is a rectangular hole that communicates with the open inkstone pool on the right, from which water enters the inkstone pool. There are cloud patterns and divine beasts carved around the inkstone box, and a fairy feathered man sits beside the inkstone pond. Today's inkstones are mainly made of stone, but also pottery and wood. Qin Jian's inkstone is simple in material, but exquisite in carving, which makes people forget the vulgarity. Sun Zhen said in his heart, as expected of a great Confucian disciple, "You don't ask for material, but for artistic conception. You are not a layman. When the ink is polished, the question is over." Qin Gan thought for a moment, combined with what he had learned from Shi Juxian, and then wrote, "Fanyang Pavilion begging for the robber Du Mai, saying, there is a thief in the big city of the ministry, and there is only one man. The 5 husbands in Nanpingli of Benting." So on. Wang Tu's place of origin, age, title, name, the process of the crime, the murderer and the person who reported the crime, as well as his inquest and investigation after he came to the pavilion, were all concisely and clearly recorded. This document is to be handed over to the county. After Su Zhong is arrested, he will write a statement of Su Zhong, plus the final trial process and judicial decision. Putting them together, it is a complete book of Yuan. When he finished writing, Lu Ru said, "It's not early, so I have to rush back to the county for business at night. Qin Jun, why don't we go to seal up the Su family?" "Okay." Wang Tu's wife had the courage to grab Sun Zhen's feet and begged him to be the master, but she didn't dare to lose her temper in front of Qin Gan and Lu Ru, who were wearing seals and dignified manners. When she answered the question, Qin Gan understood that she was ill and did not let her get out of bed. At this moment, when he heard that they were leaving, he wanted to speak, but he did not dare to speak. He looked straight at Sun Zhen, pitiful. Sun Zhen is not a ruthless person, even if he has decided to market horse bones, he can't pretend not to see it. When he was about to speak, Qin Gan saw Wang's wife's pleading eyes and asked in a warm voice, "What do you want to say?" "Say." Wang Tu's wife mournfully said, although the husband of the humble concubine was vulgar and insulted the old man, he would not die. "I just hope that Su Zhong can be taken as soon as possible to avenge him. This is a business, and I will do my best." Then Su Zhong reigns supreme in the township and has a wide range of friendships. I heard that the concubine also has his relatives and friends in the county. Qin Gan interrupted her words and said decisively, "No matter how many friends he has made, it is useless." He turned to the chief and said, "The Wang family is widowed and orphaned, and many relatives have died. Take care of it. If you have any questions, just ask." The lieutenant complied. When he was making a note to Shi Juxian, Qin Gan had already learned who Su Zhong was. After he reminded the chief of the Riviera, he said to Sun Zhen, "Su Zhong is a young chivalrous man in the countryside, with many cronies, and the gentleman is the chief of the pavilion. In charge of the security of the whole place, you need to be more careful, and protect the Wang family's wife and daughter. It is not that there has been no case of cronies killing the bitter master before." Sun Zhen replied, "Yes, please don't worry, Lord Qin, you won't be here." The governor sent them out, and before they got in the car, 2 people came over on horseback from a distance. Coming to the front, it was Cheng Yan and a man in his 30s. A cyan-colored ribbon hangs from the man's waist, and a sack is tied at one end of the ribbon, and a side seal is placed inside. Judging from its shape and size, it should be a half-pass seal. Cyanosis is black with a reddish tinge. A half-pass seal, a rectangular seal, is half the size of a normal official seal. These two things are worn by 100-stone officials. This person is a rank husband in his hometown, whose surname is Xie Mingguo. Just as the chief of a large county is called the magistrate, and the chief of a small county is called the magistrate, and the salaries are different, according to the size of the township and the number of households, there are two kinds of rose husbands. No rank. There is rank, that is, the meaning of official grade and rank. Those with ranks are appointed by the county, and those without ranks are appointed by the county. Yingyan is a large county, and the chief is called the magistrate. Fanyangting is densely populated, comparable to a township in a remote area. The hometown including Fanyangting is naturally a big town. Before the epidemic, there were more than 2,000 households and more than 10,000 residents, now there are nearly 2,000 households, nearly 10,000. When the mounts stopped, Cheng Yan and Xiaowu stood up and saluted. Sun Zhen had no rank, so she didn't enter the stream, and gave way to one side. Qin Jian and Lu Ryu returned the half-salute. Lu Ryu knew Xiaowu, and the relationship between the two was not bad. He said teasingly, "Let's look at it now, Junhe Shenshen is here late yet. I should have arrived early, but I encountered something on the way and delayed my stay." "Oh? What happened?" Xiaowu stopped talking. Qin Gan saw the strangeness and asked, "Why do you hesitate? Let's talk if you have something to say. I just met a few people to intercede for Su Zhong." Just now, Wang's wife was worried that someone would intercede on Su Zhong's behalf, and she actually ran into it when she went out. Qin Gan was furious, slapped the chariot beside him suddenly, and said, "Su Zhongji, how could he be here?" With a little courage, he disturbed the laws of the Han family. His sin is unforgivable, and there are still people who intercede for him? Xiaowu said, "Who said no?" The lower officials said the same to them, but they also said that Su Zhong killed for his mother after all, a pure filial piety. He may be filial to his mother, but is he filial to the country? If everyone is like him and does not obey the laws of the country, what will the world be like? He is only a small filial piety, not a great filial piety. Yet, small loyal thieves harm Dazhong, and small filial thieves harm great filial piety. I didn't wait for them to finish, so I rejected them like this." But they said, Zhou Zuan said, "Father, son and brother, misfortune does not match and, Su Zhong committed a crime and it was his fault, but why should his mother be implicated? His mother is very old." "What do you mean by this? Who said that his mother is going to be implicated?" Qin Gan asked Sun Zhen. "Sun Qing, are you going to detain his mother in the pavilion and force her to surrender?" According to the provisions of the law, the parents of the fugitive can be detained in the booth, and the fugitive's filial piety can be used to prompt him to surrender. Sun Zhen replied without leaking, "Mother Su is old, I'm afraid she won't be able to endure the hardship. I don't have such a plan for the time being. Sun Qing has no intention of doing this, so why is he implicated?" Xiaowu Dao, "It's probably about sealing up the Su family. Thieves who kill, seal their property. This is the law of the country." Sun Zhen understood, this Xiaowu was probably persuaded by Su Zhong's friend, just because he knew that Qin Qian was ruthless and it was difficult to speak directly, so he tried to ask him to be exempted from the ban on Su's family. Check. He could understand, and Qin Gan must have understood it long ago, so his words were like a gust of wind, his expression was like thunder, and he would not give in at all. Sun Zhen secretly said, "Yesterday's case, the county official just came down, and the pleas have already been handed to Xiaowu's ear." Shi Juxian said that Su Zhong has a lot of friends, which seems to be true. But how did his friend know about the county official? "It's coming." Just as he thought of this, Qin Ganyi said angrily, "I and Lu Jun arrived in the countryside near noon today, and the sun does not change, and the words of the request have already reached you. Su Zhong's cronies are really well informed. Who is it? Message to them. Sun Zhen's heart skipped a beat, and she thought of a person. Could it be that after Chen Bao reported to Su Haibao, he found a few friends of Su Zhong along the way? Chen Bao listened to his instructions and went to Dewangli to report if it was Chen Bao. Then in the final analysis, isn't it me who tipped off the news? He said calmly. Second Lord Jin Shepao obediently came from the county, who may have seen it on the road, and Su Zhongpeng. Humph! Qin Qian was as cold as ice, stared at Xia Wu, and said in a more serious tone, because of his own personal resentment, disregarding the country's laws, linking with the party, domineering in the countryside, arrogant and prestige, he looks filial on the outside, but in fact is cruel and ruthless, this Guo Zilu yet. What I hate in my life, one is castrated, and the other is this generation. Now, under the order of the county magistrate to investigate and handle this case, I will not show mercy. Xia Wu did not change his face, smiled and flattered. Jun Qin's loyalty is harmless, everyone knows it. Sun Zhen had a guilty conscience to be a thief. In order to get rid of suspect, she stood by Qin Gan's side without looking sideways. After listening to Xia Wu's words, she couldn't help but glance at him, thinking, it should be said that he is smooth, okay? Or is it better to be cheeky? Qiangfu is different from the pavilion chief. The pavilion chief mostly uses brave people, while Qiangfu mostly uses local scholars. Maybe there are too few people in contact, or the people I know are too good. Since transmigration, Sun Zhen has never seen such a thick-faced scholar. Of course, the reason why Xia Wu had a thick and slick face, disregarded Qin Gan's anger, and pleaded for Su Zhong again and again, may also have something to do with his official position being appointed by the county and irrelevant to the county. Lu Ru smoothed things out and said, it is my duty to seal up the investigation, why should Qin Jun be so angry? Haha! Zimming, I will not hide it from you, it is useless for anyone to intercede. He took Qin Gan's hand and said with a smile, go, get in the car. Quickly seal up the Su family, so that no one else will come to ask for help and be annoying. When Qin did not do well, he gave Lu Ru a face, so he reluctantly gave up his temper and got into the car. Sun Zhen and Xia Wu also got on the horse. After Cheng Yan bowed, he retreated behind Sun Zhen, and asked Du to buy a ride together. The chariot was in front, Xia and Sun were next, Cheng and Du were in the back, and the six went to the king's house. Xia Wu and Lu Ru said a few words, greeted Sun Zhen, and said with a smile, is it sure to be the new chief of Fanyang Pavilion, Lord Sun? Exactly. Xie Jun can just call me by my name. How can you call me by name? It's too rude. I've long admired Sun Jun's name. When did you come to the pavilion? Why didn't you tell me in advance, so that I could welcome you? Sun Zhen said in her heart, what famous name do I have that you can admire for a long time? Maintaining her usual gentleness and modesty, she replied, thank you for being too polite. My last name is very polite. Sun Jun was at a loss for words for a while, then paused, and said, I came in a hurry. I should have gone to see Xie Jun yesterday, but unfortunately, I came across Su Zhong's case, and I can't rest for a while. Xia Wu said enthusiastically, in the future, you and I will be officials in the same village. You should move more frequently and get closer to you. Alas, it would be great if you could serve in the village pavilion. When you leave the pavilion, it is my cottage. Next to the door, 2 steps away. After greeting Sun Zhen and chatting a few words, Xia Wu urged the horse to move forward again, and then spoke to Lu Ru and Qin Gan. Even if Qin Gan ignored him, he was happy. Sun Zhen said in his heart, this person is exquisite in every aspect. Talk about it, come to the king. When I came here last time, the Jianman saw so many nobles coming, so frightened that he fell to his knees and didn't dare to look up. Xia Wu jumped off the horse and asked attentively, would you like to call the lieutenant chief? Qin Gan didn't give him a good look, and said, we are here to seal up the Su family, not to see the boss. Fuxia got out of the car. Xiaowu smiled and said, yes, yes. The inner door was not fully opened, only one door was opened. He hurried forward, pushed the other door open, bent over and cupped his hands, and said, Jun Qin, please come in, Jun Lu. Please come in, Sun Jun please come in, everyone please come in. Qin Gan was helpless to his spit-faced self-destruction, so he had no choice but to keep his mind out of sight, not to look at him, and to go straight into the middle. There is a bomb room in each RI, where the RI chief works. Sun Zhen Chong Cheng Yan winked, Cheng Yan confessed, and before walking quickly, he went to the bomb room to find the chief, brought him over, led the way, and quickly arrived at Su's house. When they arrived at the door of Su's house, everyone was taken aback. The door was not closed, and the courtyard was full of people. There were a dozen or so people, most of them in brown clothes with swords, and some with embroidered clothes and fresh clothes. All of them faced the door of the main room and sat in the courtyard in 4 or 5 rows. Sun Zhen's first reaction was to go to Chen Bao, and after a quick look around, she breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Chen Bao is not here. Qin Gan didn't react for a while, turned his face to look at the chief, and asked, who is in the hospital? The head of the lieutenant was uneasy and replied, they are all friends of the Su family. Because they heard about Su Zhong's incident, they came to pay tribute to Su's mother. Where is this meeting with Su's mother? It's clearly dismounting. Qin Gan's face was blue, and he ignored the empty words in the room, and asked directly, how do you know that we are going to seal up the Su family? Sun Zhen spoke to her heart to heart, although she did not know if Chen Bao told them, but Chen Bao came to Su's house to report the news, the rear would definitely know. For this to be spoken out, there must be a crime of whistleblowing. Knowing the law and breaking the law, the punishment is the most severe. Sun Zhen regretted a little, if I knew this earlier, I couldn't let Chen Bao come. Although he wanted to show his favor to Su Zhong, he was not sure whether the show would be rewarded enough. However, it is too late for you reading www.yuyuganshu.com to regret it, let's wait for what the rear says. The lieutenant replied cautiously, there was someone just now. Sun Zhen swallowed. What happened to someone just now? Are you here to report the news? No, someone came to Su's house to borrow something just now, and saw that Su's mother was ill, so the word spread, and these people came. Is it sick? Qin Gan sneered as if not believing, we just came to seal up and check, but she is ill? It's very timely. I wanted to go to the courtyard, but the courtyard was small and filled with those dozen or so people. Now, there is no aisle to go. Xiaowu and Du Mai hurriedly stepped forward and said loudly, the county thief Cao Qinjun and the prisoner Lu Jun are here, so why don't you kneel down to greet you and get out of the way? The people in the courtyard were not blind or deaf, they knew they were coming, but no one moved. Hearing the words at this time, the 2 people kneeling at the front took the lead, and a dozen people put their hands on the ground together, bent down, touched their foreheads, bowed in the house, and said loudly, the princes in the county are visiting, the villains and others will retire for the time being. Old madam, please take good care of yourself and don't worry about brother Zhong. After kneeling down, they got up one after another and came out of the courtyard, but did not leave, but stood on the alley outside. If it is said that Su Zhong was strange as a man at first, and then horse bones in the market of thousands of gold, then only surprise can be used to describe Sun Zhen's feelings. Previously, the performances of Shi Juxian, Chen Bao, Cheng Yan, including Benting begging for robbery and Xiaowu begging for love only showed that Su Zhong was very prestigious, but the scene in front of him vividly showed that Su Zhong was in the countryside. The appeal of chivalry. More than a dozen people came, and how many did not come? If Su Zhong raised his arms, how many people could be called? And how many Qian Shao civilians can the Qingxia summoned by him bring along? Sun Zhen regretted a little again. This time, what she regretted was not that she had sent Chen Bao to report the news rashly, but that she had not done enough and not good enough.